Liberty and justice for all. Okay. So I'll let Christian, he's gonna go. Oh, actually, before we go there, I just want to take care of that one item that we wanted to take care of tonight because it's of time concerns, and this is the highway department, the additional radios that is needed above and beyond the ones that we ordered end of the year. So these are for the new vehicles. So I forwarded to everybody. There's a let me just see here. Just a second. Right here. It's $21,994.38. We're going to be using the Highway Reserve Fund to pay for these radios, which will complete the entire radio requirements of highway.
It's a time issue. We're doing a regular meeting next Monday, right?
Correct. But if you saw, did you see the email from John Winter?
Which one? Yeah, which one?
So
the initial, I saw that stuff.
So doing the install, right? So
yeah, they're doing the installs, so we rather get the order in so the radios can come in, so he can order them right away, so that they can do the installation on the install date.
Which is when again?
I don't have the date with me. I don't know.
Was it in the email? Sorry, I had pulled up all your zoning emails, so. I haven't really lost.
So the decision is we authorize the purchase of the radios, yes or no, for 21,000. Not to exceed 22,000. That'll be my motion.
Yeah, no, I was just asking what the specific time issue on for John.
It was in the email.
installation.
There was several emails going
yeah.
back and forth. I don't have the exact details, Rich.
Okay.
But
Okay. Well,
whether we
just,
do it now, do it Monday, is it
no, I
gonna
was
change
just.
things?
Okay. Well, just we're okay.
Johnson.
Well, we have an agenda for a work session. Then we're starting by bringing in an item. That's.
But there was an email letting everybody know that we're gonna be introducing this item because of the timeliness. I said to John, can we wait till the 10th? And he preferred that it would be decided on tonight.
Okay.
So again, I'll motion the purchase of the Eastern Communications radio system for highway. The remaining radios for not to exceed $22,000.
second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Rich, what's your vote?
Fine.
I didn't hear you.
We'll need a roll call.
Oh, that's true, yeah. So roll call. Rich,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
aye.
Mary Shaw, I.
Andrew.
Andrea Rindo, aye.
All right, so now we're gonna start with chapter 220.
Can you do claims?
Oh. That's a good point. Okay, so we're gonna do approval of claims. So motion to approve claims.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna start with chapter 220 of the zoning amendments. So Christian's gonna go through it. We're gonna expedite. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review. I had a few questions, but they're minor in addition to the ones I think you and I had talked about a couple of things. So.
Okay.
So this evening we have before us chapter 220. It's a proposed local law concerning zoning. So this is a substantial chapter, and we have made subsequent edits from what the town board had previously reviewed are now highlighted. So anything that has a highlight is a subsequent change. Anything that remains red and underlined or is just in black letter, there have been no changes. And so we're going to go through. So this is all existing code language. This is just minor cleanup that we haven't touched before.
Could you just give an overview of what 220 is? Because people are listening, so it should,
So 220 is the town's zoning chapter. It essentially dictates how land can be used, whether or not it's a type of use on that land, or it is dimensional conformities, for example, how much area you could have, how much setbacks you can have. It also, again, goes more into detail on the types of uses. So if you have a particular type of use, the zoning code might provide regulations and standards for that type of use. And so pretty much every municipality in the state of New York has a zoning law. They are different, but also there's generally common themes to zoning laws. And it really just dictates how land is able to be used.
the legal use of your property in a municipality under applicable law.
Yes.
Quick question, on page 23, can you remind me where we put all the wireless?
So what,
Stuff.
yeah, so for wireless, that is all been, and actually, if you look on the screen right now, that's a perfect example.
Yeah.
So accessory or antenna equipment was a new definition that has now been highlighted yellow because it's been moved to that portion, that article of the zoning chapter, so it's all condensed. So anything that has to do with like cell towers and
Yeah.
those types of uses are now consolidated under one portion of the zoning code in order to streamline and
That's what I assumed, as I was going through it, I couldn't find where it got, what article it got moved to, could you just tell us?
I forget off the top of my.
Yeah,
It's,
we'll.
it's there.
As we go through, okay,
Yeah,
because I
it's there.
couldn't find it,
The idea was to package all of that in one place.
yeah,
Because to have an article or a portion of the zoning law that is so specific to a particular kind of use, it just made it easier to kind of follow, to have those definitions that just relate to telecom. tucked right
I
in.
totally agree,
Yeah.
because they were all over.
Yeah.
They were all over
Yeah.
the place,
We
I
were
just,
jumping back and forth, back and forth. right.
in the 200 pages I was trying to get through over the weekend, I couldn't figure out where it got moved, that's all,
I think
I-
it's 40.
It's 41.
thank you.
And so for on the screen, we have a good example. So accessory microbrewery was accidentally omitted as a definition. It's highlighted blue because it's been added back into the draft, but there's no proposed changes. Same thing with accessory or antenna equipment. That was a new definition that has been now folded in and consolidated under the section of the zoning code that discusses telecommunication facilities. And so for the next one, we have accessory winery and farm brewery. We have some proposed, stemming from our discussions with the planning board, some proposed additional to the definition there. And so if there's any questions, please let us know. I'm gonna keep going. And so everything that you see here that is just black letter, those are existing definitions, no changes. Very minor change to animal care facility. Again, antenna that's been moved to the telecommunications, same thing with base station. There's been no changes here. And so here, these are blue. These are definitions that have now been proposed to be removed. So it's existing code language that we've recommended to be removed. For example, with the co-location, there's two different definitions. The one that is highlighted yellow has been moved to the telecommunications section of the zoning code. And then club is an existing
I
definition.
think club was removed because the term wasn't used in the code. We couldn't
Correct.
Search for it and couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Can you, is there for child daycare, there is a. Yeah, that definition there was I think it was just a typo, the word license should be licensed, let me see, where is that? Right here?
Yeah, it's right there. You've got the cursor on it. It says
Yeah.
and/or licenses. It should be licensed. Or and/or license.
So commissioning was a new definition that has been proposed to be removed from the code, and that's because these code revisions do not discuss battery energy storage systems, and so there's no purpose in adding it into the definitions of the
And now we
zoning.
have a whole section, a whole area dedicated to that, correct?
Well, we've set that aside.
For now,
Tabled it.
If and when we get to that, our view is that like the telecom thing, you're gonna have definitions that are so specific to them that we would just fold it into that particular article.
right, so it's just carved out for now.
Yeah, it's.
I remember, I'm just,
Yeah.
people were watching, so as we go.
There were a couple things we decided just to park and revisit.
Yep, I agree,
Yeah, and so
it's a
for,
big area.
yeah, and so for ones that deal with battery energy storage systems, they've all been removed for that reason.
Mm.
Dedicated use building, that's a energy storage system. There were some minor changes to the electric vehicle charging new definition, basically removing the amperage and just reverting to the volts. And that's because we understand that more based upon the voltage than the amps. Farm animal is a new definition that proposed to be added, and that's because farm animal will then reappear in other sections of the zoning code. So it is a new defined term in order to assist other provisions of the zoning code which discuss farm animals. It was undefined previously. Grocery store, just a minor additions there to kind of.
Greenhouse gas just showing up somewhere else or something?
That was
That's
just
good.
battery energy storage.
Yeah, so it's,
And it wasn't used elsewhere in the code.
No,
yeah, and so when battery use storage, if it comes back up, or as a proposed local law, this would probably make its way in some way, shape, or form, yeah.
On Blue Family Daycare where it says, no, go down. Okay, what should say? Where it says 7 children, the word 4 is struck. Should it be, do we want that word in there? I think so, right? 3 hours per child. For 7 children to.
You'll need some.
We're missing
For
something.
7 to 12 children.
Yeah.
There we go.
What's?
It's difficult. You focus on content and you pay less attention to typos,
Yeah,
or you go through and look for typos and then
then you miss the
the
content.
content.
Again, height has been moved to the telecommunications. Here are some minor suggested changes to the home occupation. Also tying in another definition here, personal service establishment.
On the daycare, do we have any daycare facilities being operated out of anybody's home in the town?
Tourist
I'm
Not that I would-
curious.
not that I'm aware of.
hospital, tea room.
Like, cause you have to have licensing and all that stuff.
yeah,
No, just, we never heard of it.
What is the definition? What is a tourist home?
That's an existing portion of the code.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
You
That,
know what,
that's a tea room,
that's-
tourist home, interesting.
tourist home, I think you may want to strike.
You think maybe?
Yeah, because I think it suggests. You're starting to wade into short-term rentals, I would suggest.
Right, it sounds like an antiquated term anyway.
But it does, it says that's part of, shall not be deemed to be a home occupation. So just let it know.
Oh.
So read that, finish
Those are
reading that.
things, yeah.
Yeah, those are things
You
that
can't,
are
you're
not allowed.
not allowed.
So you might not
I
want
was
to.
wondering why we
Okay.
have personal service establishments.
Right, because then I was like, a funeral home, it's like, other than
Yeah,
this
right.
guy.
And I think the reason why personal service establishment is in there is because it's
It's
addressed
addressed,
separately.
and it already includes barbershops, beauty, but it's,
Right,
that'd be
Yeah.
duplicative, right?
I still don't know what a tourist home is, but never heard that term ever.
We could change it to something more, like modern in terms of like short term, I don't know if you wanna.
Is that what it is? I mean, we're kind of, it seems like an antiquated term that
It
we're,
is.
we're all kind of guessing as to what it really intends to address. I mean, I'm not saying it does or doesn't belong here, it just like, if none of us know what it means, why is it there?
come through and tour my home.
I envision like people, with horses and buggies stopping on their way as they travel, that's what I'm envisioning, and I don't, maybe that still happens.
Now, there's a catch-all at the end there.
Well-
It says trades or businesses of any kind. That seems to encompass just about everything.
If you type in tourist home into a search engine, the first thing that comes up is tourist home cafe in Flagstaff. And the next thing that comes up is the Chateau.
Interesting.
So, and vacation
let's- yeah.
homes, I think we just frankly leave it.
Yeah, I'd say leave it, let's, yeah.
But the other one,
keep it
like,
in- on our radar.
we do have. A like home offices or something, is that
But I think that
Yeah,
would
we're-
supersede here, right? Because we do have, yeah, to Dan's point, we do have the ability for people to.
Yeah.
Certain businesses out of their homes, in residential areas, which I remember changing that.
or within, you know, whatever it is, X amount.
From a main highway.
From, well, from the commercial zone. within-
Yeah.
Forget what it is, it's a commercial zone, you can do certain types of professional.
We did that for the school building. Oh, yes.
So I'm just wondering like how to make that clear. You know,
But there's a big difference that from working from home and
no.
having a home business.
Yeah, this was
Yeah.
regarding
A lot
the
of
whole
people.
business.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's.
yeah, and
and this is just a definition as we get into.
Right.
How the code treats those
Okay.
those kinds of businesses that are operated out of homes.
This
is
doesn't, this
Right.
won't apply.
This doesn't control.
Right.
this.
Right, yeah.
The,
That's
the,
like, I
uh,
think it's later in the code.
the catch-all businesses of any kind
Yeah,
is
that's
kind of a killer for everything,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
like, maybe that should be, not be in there, because if you're allowing,
what's the point of itemizing if you're then gonna say, by the
then-
way.
yeah, what. It's gonna be some sort of business that you're operating.
But that's for the definition, right? So if this definition isn't used.
The only-
Well, it says all of those things will not be
Not.
not be deemed a home
No, in
occupation.
some of the places we are allowing home occupation.
Yeah.
So you do have under permitted accessory uses, you do have things called home-based professional office studio or home occupation. So that's where I think they start bringing some of those
Right.
other
What is,
uses in.
what is it
That
for me?
makes-
Under, you said under,
So under a section, it's under, when you start
Accessory.
dealing with your, we're gonna get to it shortly. But when we start getting into like the actual district regulations, that's when home occupation shows up again, and so does accessory professional offices. So I think there's some additional. I think there's additional ability to have like the professional offices within. As an accessory use, but just not home occupation.
just the term under permitted, I never remember ever hearing.
No, she's saying that it's
Oh, under, oh,
Under
okay,
the
sorry,
permitted
sorry,
district
one word, I'm
residential
sorry, okay,
District.
okay, under permitted, under, got it,
Yeah.
sorry,
There's a space
mind.
between
I
those
got it,
two.
I'm with you now.
That's 220-43.1, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it's possible that we might want to just take a look at that definition one more time after we look at that action.
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds like a good plan.
Twenty 43.1.
These days, there's so many people that are doing businesses from home. Just-
move in here, that's marked for follow-up. I believe animal hospital was removed. Because we include it elsewhere. So
I saw that.
yeah, duplicative. And then same here, just some cleanup as well. Large wireless facility that was moved.
On the municipal facilities, just for clarification, fire departments and libraries are considered municipal facilities.
It says Lewisboro Library.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And here it would be a fire district serving the town of Lewisboro as well, just to make sure that any fire districts, because they're separate.
Well,
Yes.
And there
Okay.
are more than one.
Yeah,
Does what about operated, leased, rented, that's,
Operated, wouldn't that be considered operated?
Uses
Yeah.
that are owned or
Or
operated.
operated, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so that would encompass a lease or a license agreement or something of that nature, as long as it's being operated by the town of Lewisboro, a fire district that serves Lewisboro, the library, or other uses so determined by the town board, so that also, in the event there is something very unique, the town board would have that discretion to.
So it's
determine.
like a stormwater facility that's placed in a right of way that was secured from a third party. That's a facility, it's operated by the town. And
Battery storage, open table. More battery storage, here's personal service establishment, the only addition here was barber shops. And so going back to home occupation. All of these uses are not considered home occupations. Because they're personal services establishments regulated as personal service establishments.
And then that,
So they're allowed essentially where home. occupation-
No,
They're allowed to
I'm
work personal
getting mixed up
service.
with the negatives and the.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so these would be allowed where personal service establishments are permitted, but not necessarily. They're not treated the same as home
Home
occupations.
occupations.
Yes, these are separate and distinct from home occupations.
oh, okay.
Used to go.
Right, these are more. There are businesses, and these are services.
And you just. In if it's possible, in a nutshell, you tell me how in the code. We're distinguishing between those two, home occupations and personal services, in terms of like where they can be or the impacts or, like.
Personal services is permitted in your resident, or in your commercial districts, like the RB,
right,
GB. As commercial businesses.
You just go to place of worship for a second. In space and then facilities. There's no minimum square footage for that, is there?
there,
This is just a definition.
right, you do.
Right, is it defined somewhere else as well?
You have regulations.
Okay.
So just to clarify, so that there's when you get down to that professional office. In that section I was talking about, that's where when everyone's saying, oh, you can't conduct any businesses, you're allowed to conduct. Some professional office, it's called home professional office businesses within the zoning district, so when we
Right.
get to that, that's where it pops up again, so you can conduct. Some limited business
Right.
within your
Mhm.
individual residential. This, a lot of that's an existing definition, so you were
Correct,
allowed to,
right.
yeah.
This is the kind of thing that probably for the public, we want to have like a cheat sheet, one pager, just, just speaking to these different things, because we kind of think of them together. Thinking of doing something like that, this is how you have to understand.
For anyone that's looking to start a business.
Well, and I think what's helpful about that is the new schedule of regulations is a table that is new and will really help someone. It's kind of
Okay.
one document. And we'll get there. It's
Okay.
one of the shorter things, but that's very helpful where you just kind of look at a single document. It tells you what the use is, where it's permitted, and then if you have a question on what your type of
Right.
use is, you can
Great.
just go to the definitions. Minor cleanup right there, sanitary facility, since that's a defined term. Move to telecommunications. And solar energy systems are different than battery storage systems, so that's why those remain.
But I mean, it's very likely at some point to come back to that and look to do some vote on that as well.
You have it in your vote.
We have that.
That was one you said you were forward with.
So it's in the batch, right, with the different levels and everything,
Yes.
but you're keeping the definition here.
Yes,
Rather than.
yeah, there's only a handful. Of
Yeah.
solar definitions.
Yeah.
Go back to what is substantial change, hold on.
So this has been moved to the
That's a
telecommunications.
telecommunications.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were just scrolling a little fast.
Sorry.
You've seen it 1,000 times, but our friends at home haven't.
Swimming pool, we just clarified it's
Mhm.
meant for human recreation.
But we did have a pool proposed for horses, so that's why that came in.
Yeah.
We also have the doggy day at the end of the season here in the capital.
Utility pole has been moved to telecommunications. It's like, why, I think there's a couple here, yep.
Stop with the wireless telecom facility.
Those have all been moved to the telecommunications. And that is it for the definitions.
Okay.
And then one thing for the board as well as the public, so whenever you see 3 little ... that means there's interceding code language, which is not being touched.
Mhm.
It's just a drafting kind of shortcut, so you don't always have to copy and paste. In the beginning here, where there was kind of more targeted edits, we use the ... to signify that there's sections in between that are not being modified, but then as we get into more of the substantial revisions, we've just included pretty much the whole article,
The whole section.
the whole section, yeah. So this just signifies there's a couple sections before which no edits are proposed to be made to, and then so we start at 22012 yards and setbacks. And there's no proposed changes to the beginning portions of it. Here we go to exterior lighting standards. This is new.
This is still in definitions or where are you?
So now we've moved into, so we're done with, we're done with regulation or
Okay.
definitions. Now we've moved into
Regulations.
regulations.
I'm just curious, the sentence following the highlighting, seems like that should go first.
I think it has to do with once, because it's in red line format, so hopefully I don't jump us around.
Oh, okay.
But once we do that, it'll look,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, no.
See, it looks a lot cleaner, so this is
Yeah.
what we were just looking at, once we do this.
I think.
Right.
It looks a lot cleaner once it's adopted, but just because of,
I think Dan was saying because that last sentence says it is the purpose of this section, he was suggesting maybe that goes first and then.
so the reason why it comes after is because it goes by 1, 2,
References,
3,
yeah.
4, 5, 6.
Mhm.
This,
I'm gonna try and go back to where we see all the edits.
Thank you.
There we go, okay, it stays. Yeah, so then it goes by and then it runs into these.
Yeah, this is much better than what we had before, because we've been getting a few complaints, as Kevin knows. About some
Some lighting?
lighting,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know,
there's,
so this is good.
there's no measurement of any of the light.
And foot candles.
yeah, I believe there.
There should
There is,
And there's also reference to a standard.
Because up top there's not, I mean, it's really broad. It says,
Yeah, that's just the purpose.
okay, just
Yeah.
legislative intent.
Yeah, so this is just, this is just the purpose portion, and then we go into the applicability, so where these apply. On a structure was removed, because sometimes people install lights on things that are not structures, like trees.
Yeah.
Now, if someone has already a light up on a tree, does that mean it's grandfathered in? Or,
Maybe it's at the end, existing gate.
So this is all encompassing, not just when someone has a site plan, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, that, when we were going through it the first time, that was one of my concerns, it's like, okay, if someone
yeah, so
has
this,
pool lighting that's been there for 10 years.
so. Right here, it says all existing outdoor lighting on a structure which is replaced, modified, or installed after the effective date, so if you.
Okay, so if they replace it,
Yeah,
now they're
replace-
required.
Yeah, so if they replace it or they
Okay.
want to move it or something, then they would.
then it applies. Otherwise, they're fine the way they are. They don't have to go in and change anything.
Yeah, I think we added that because of your comment during the.
Oh, that makes me feel better. Yeah. Deja vu, we've had this conversation.
C is all for non-residential, multifamily, so this is more commercial based.
Yes, and these are, so beginning here, we talk about lighting plan. That are required to be submitted to the planning board as part of its site plan review unless it's waived. There's been no proposed changes to the version the board previously reviewed, except when we go to some standards. And then this goes to the remark about some having kind of more concrete standards as well.
It was a comment, I forget where this came from. Someone asked about dark sky association standards. Is that something that we,
Yeah, so I think a lot of the regulations are kind of dark sky based, but they're not specifically dark sky because they tend to be a little bit much more strict. And I think the conference plan committee wanted to make sure that, you know, the regulations are fair, but not something that's so overly restrictive.
Right.
That was gonna cause problems, especially in like the residential neighborhoods and stuff like that.
okay,
Provide information about the dark sky standard to homeowners as a like additional, hey,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
right,
there's kind of like.
So here we have the a preference of 3,000 Kelvin of light and a maximum of 5,000.
Once you're over 5,000, it almost starts getting like a bluish color to it. It's pretty obnoxious.
And I think that's one example where the dark sky standard is 3,000 Kelvin, not, so that gives a little bit of leeway
3,000 small.
if somebody really feels strongly.
right.
For maybe a safety concern or something of that nature, just to really make sure there's more than 3,000 Kelvin.
To scare the bear away.
So next we're going into landscaping, screening and buffers. There have been no proposed changes to the beginning portion.
This only applies to multifamily dwellings and, right?
Yeah,
Site plan.
subdivision or special use.
Only for before the
Sorry.
planning board.
But the planning board can waive, like, we wanted to put that in there so that if there's a need, or if it's like a minor, something minor.
So just slow down again. It applies to who?
Site plan, subdivision, or special use permit application.
So the only residential one would be a potential subdivision.
Right?
But there'd be no instance where a single family residence standalone lot would have to,
Because it's a lot.
Yes.
yeah.
It's a lot of telling people how they landscape their property. I understand subdivisions. But it just seems,
It's,
It doesn't pertain to the individual homeowner.
and it does, and right, and it really focuses on, requiring landscaping as opposed to not requiring.
no, that I know, but I mean, there's some language in there. Hold on. Where it was kind of vague as to what was acceptable. I'm just trying to find. So, yeah, there here of something. Going between my screen, the tiny print, and this is just.
Might be, because so these are review standards, it might be under. Different.
Oh, yeah, different side. I mean, this is all specific to
These are just the standards.
Yeah.
No,
site
I
plan
know.
subdivision special use
Site plan,
permit, so.
yeah, something
yeah.
that's gonna come to the planning board for a permit, which is going to be a development of some kind.
Yeah.
Right, everything through number 11.
Yeah.
Right.
And then just to point out a couple changes, So the location of trees with a diameter of 6 inches, that's a consistency edit because the tree ordinance. Speaks to six inches, so just making sure applicants don't have to look at different types of sizes of trees. Plan.
We extended the time frame from the November 1st instead of November 15th.
Here's buffer areas. This is only multi-use or non-residential. And that is the only proposed edit, which was, so has remained there. And then wetlands and steep slopes, I'm just gonna mention this, because there's now a new proposed chapter, it's been removed from the zoning code. So wetlands and steep slopes remains in the town code, just under its own dedicated chapter, which we reviewed last time. Just consistency edits right here for district regulation. So now this portion of the zoning code, it discusses district regulation. So it's broken down into basically the different districts. So the first one is residential districts, then it goes into, in no particular order, general business, community, and so we'll get there.
Under ranching, page 40.
Yes.
Subsection B, I know part of it was existing and part of it was added. So there's very few of these around town, temporary stands. What about those small farms that have what I would call permanent farm structure, permanent farm stand structures? There's a few places around town which are little cute sheds and there's like a little money box, in there, and you can come and go and buy eggs from them. Sometimes they put flowers in there and
Bundles of wood.
bundles of wood, and they're all in these little.
Are they generally open? Are they generally open all year round? Or are they only open during certain seasons?
No, as far as I know, the
Those are
ones,
set up like temporary, right? Like along
No.
roadside.
Like,
yes, they are roadside, but the one I'm thinking about off the top of my head is a permanent structure. It's been there for a couple of years. It has a door and windows. And it's very small. It's not like, anybody could live in there. It's really tiny. There's like a
Right.
couple of shelves and they put whatever they're selling at that time, they put it out. I mean, do they have more stuff certain times of years than others? Yes.
Right.
And sometimes there's nothing, but it's there. It's a permanent structure.
This speaks more to the operation as opposed to the structure,
Yeah.
so.
Well, it does say temporary.
Right.
and this would,
Temporary stands.
I mean, for that specific example, are they in a residential district?
Yes,
Okay.
So I mean, I think
we don't have a lot of non-residential in town. I don't know if you've noticed. So it's kind of charming. I really, I understand when things become a nuisance, becomes a problem. But, those few that are out and about throughout the town are actually kind of sweet and charming. And,
So the question is, how do you distinguish between that and somebody that wants to use it as some kind of a loophole to build an entire retail store or something,
Correct.
Yeah.
But
You could remove the word temporary.
Right, yeah.
yeah,
If it has a variety of different things based on the season, I mean, it might be temporary in that form, that you can't count on getting. Flowers.
no, it's kind, sometimes there's stuff in there, sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's stuff in there in the winter time, sometimes there's not.
It's not like,
It's,
What if you said except as, right temporary, except as stands for the, and put periodic sale
Seasonal.
or seasonal, maybe seasonal.
yeah, that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, that would cover it.
Just so they don't have to take the stand down. They
Yeah.
Keep the stand.
I think we can take that risk, and if it blows up, we'll come back and.
So then we would just change it to stands for the seasonal.
If the field and
Yeah.
garden makes it seasonal. It's consistent.
I'm good with that.
This does not include lemonade stands, so
They're seasonal too.
I always stop for those.
Iced tea stand.
Iced tea stands, yes. You don't want to break the entrepreneurial spirit of the young.
And so these are just regulations for the minimum lot size and maximum number of ranching animals. Ranching animals is a defined term, as well as farm animals. And so there's been some changes here as well.
If you hold on a second, I wanna.
Yeah.
I wanna absorb this cumulative, not cumulative.
I know I'm missing the point of this, but 3 adults per acre, 1 adult per acre, what are we?
They're the big ones.
So wait, if you have
One adult
an
cow.
area which
Yeah.
can take a maximum of 1 horse, but it could take 10 chickens, then we're saying you could only have 1 animal in that area, is that how I read that sentence? Alright, it says that the maximum number.
Total number of animals.
The more
Yeah.
restricted maximum hour
Yeah.
applies to the total number of animals.
We discussed leaving poultry out and it got complicated, so. You know, but if someplace had, you didn't necessarily want to allow 30 sheep and 20 goats and 10 cattle.
Yeah, that
But
is easier
poultry
to
could be the
fathom.
exception.
Yeah, okay, so,
Yeah, and just keep in mind, the original, like, just so that everybody, in the original text had, basically you had the first 2 acres, you could have 1 animal. And then 1 acre, for each additional acre, you can have 1 additional animal.
That was
So
original, that's
that
how
was
it
the
always
original,
existed.
right? So that was part of like trying to expand that, because that was really restrictive, so. So I think there's a lot of flexibility in this, but that's why I just wanted to let everyone know, like, that's where we started from, like,
Mhm.
so.
And I think one important thing here is it provides a maximum number of animal applies.
Right.
Well, the more restrictive, so if someone has horses, that is the most restrictive, that's 6. And so if they don't have horses, all the other number of animals is 30, 20, 10, 20, 20, so.
But this doesn't apply to a horse farm, right?
Riding horses are happy.
and if someone comes with a weird combination, like, we got 3 pigs per acre, they say, I got 1 pig on my 1 acre, and then I got my chickens, but like, whoever's making this will have who's ever judging this will have the ability to apply their common sense and say, oh, that's okay, because it's still,
So,
even though we don't expressly talk about 1 pig.
Right, it's a special permit too, also keep in mind, like, this is the ranching, right? So this is a special permit, so they would have to go before the board
Mhm.
anyhow, and that would be all part of that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
This would be the
board.
zoning board.
Okay.
Yeah.
CBN.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure.
so the poultry, what is that, the minimum lot size, that says N/.
It says half
Yeah, it's
acre.
half acre, NA has been
Oh, okay,
deleted.
so,
So you have to have half an acre.
or even
to be able
1,
to Have 1 bird.
Well, I guess it starts at half acre and you can have 10 on that half
You
acre,
could have 10 on a half acre.
which does not mean you can have 5 on a quarter acre right now.
right, so the threshold for any,
Half
and then up to
acre.
10 is.
Per half acre.
Yeah.
You can max out at 20,
No roosters.
but
Why?
Doodle-doo.
I don't understand that, but some people make their own chickens.
So horses riding academies, so it doesn't have to be a riding academy. It could be somebody just
They like
wants
to
to
make
have
their
a
own
pony,
chickens.
for example. It has 2 acres.
Or competes with them or something. That's-
Do
No,
you-
but especially the riding academies.
Yeah.
is-
I said some people like to make
There's
their own
something
chicken.
that's right.
They need
If I have 2
roosters.
acres,
Like
I
you're telling me
I
they
can
can't have
have
any roosters in the
2
town
horses,
whatsoever.
2 ponies.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Right, without running a riding academy.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a specific section for riding.
Riding academies, right.
That's correct.
But I just
Do we need to say excluding riding
I-
academies?
Why don't we just strike right in the cap?
Yeah,
Just
and just
straight it out. horses.
When you're done with this part, can we go back to the chickens for a second? Okay. Just tell me when you're ready.
Because there's this definition.
There's a,
Right.
yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to farming within the town. And, look, I don't want a rooster crowing outside my window at, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. However, there are people who farm that they have chicks. They need a rooster to make chicks, like that's part of farming.
I think-
So how do you say no roosters in the town? And how does this interact with the right to farm laws?
This is the raising of field and garden crops is a special use permit. Farming is allowed elsewhere. So if you're a true farm,
Yeah,
these regs wouldn't apply to you
Agricultural.
because you would be
It's
agricultural over.
No, this is part of this
It
is
is?
the agriculture, yes.
Oh,
So, I mean, this is, but that,
is it
that,
this table under field and garden crops?
Yeah, ranch.
Ranching and the raising of field and garden.
yeah,
crops.
so the green is what the planning board's recommending. So it was not, the keeping of roosters was not in the original.
Right, but this is still
Right.
just, this isn't,
This is only
Farm.
residential.
yeah, this is a residential thing. If you're,
So if you're in.
so not in an ag
district,
district,
Sure,
or
no.
not, well, agriculture is more plants, not farming. Farming is like cattle, sheep.
Does an ag district include?
Farming.
farming?
It can, but it's not required, it's not a requirement.
No, but as long as if they make it to the ag district, then this doesn't apply.
so we have like farm operations as another use.
I believe we do.
Yeah, so if you're like a true farm operation, then these wouldn't apply. More like here.
So these are just now only the R2 F10, R2 F-75 districts. This is the RMF district. Then these are accessory uses for residential districts. I think this is just clean up, making sure that swimming pools and recreational facilities are located on the same lot.
And
Uh,
the number 7 is that,
So number 7 was proposed to be removed and we proposed to add it back in. And so these are all permitted accessory uses.
Is there a minimum lot requirement? For number of dogs?
Upwards, so.
Yeah.
Is this distinct then from the like professional offices and again, as you remember from the code, there's some. Types of professional offices that were allowed within a certain distance of the edge of a commercial district.
Yeah.
Ringing a bell?
Yeah, no, that's here.
That's coming.
Yeah.
and this is different from that.
Now we have farm animals. That's how we moved on to,
Go back, we're talking about district.
we are talking about permitted accessory uses for residential
Residential
districts.
districts.
So yeah, this is only applicable as an accessory use. And in a
Right, so I
residential
think,
district.
so let's go back, I mean, because that's what that's the domestic farm animal, so the other one was actually the agriculture, that you're saying no roosters. I'm just letting you know that, like, I don't know if that's.
But it's specifically raising of field and garden crops. That's not the only agricultural
No, that's not.
use.
I can't find any other agriculture use in there. Oh, that's what I'm
Is there,
looking for.
if you go to the use table,
Yeah,
there's not farm operation?
yeah, this is that, that's it. That's what I'm saying.
And maybe that,
That's the.
but that's
the-
not the I think there might be, present day, that's not the only ag use. Yeah.
How do we distinguish these?
I'm
two
looking at the
tables?
code, I
Yeah.
just don't see it.
I mean, we can also provide maybe a carve out for roosters, like its own line.
Maybe.
That might be the cleanest.
Making sure that we.
Oh, well, I think we need to have farm operations.
Yeah, like a specific roosters, X amount only in this.
But I think.
So what we're trying to do is
This type of
permit
law.
roosters, is that?
No, we're not trying to permit roosters.
We're not trying to,
It's just that people who live in town and keep
Chickens, what?
want to have their own chickens
Right.
and they
Some of
need
them
a
do.
rooster to do it. And if they're farming or in ag district. It's how it's done.
listen, nobody wants a rooster in the small areas around the lakes. They're not, you know, when you're on top of each other, nobody wants to hear a rooster. We get it. But in the bigger areas, in the farming areas,
Right,
Yeah, it could be maybe. Or as just an idea, roosters, you have to have a
Certain
1 or
size.
2 acre lot. You're only allowed 1 or 2, so there's kind of backstop, so you make sure that it's on a larger lot. It could be that the rooster must be kept X amount of distance from the nearest
yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
They like
But
to move.
yeah, they do, but you know, there could be, try to craft a carve out for roosters specifically in limited areas.
That's what, yeah.
No gas, leaf blowers and no roosters
We
before
lots of
8 AM.
on 2 to 3 acres. People sending videos.
Yeah, let's-
Complaining, we get lots of complaints about roosters. 2, 3 acres, sending videos at, at 5 AM or 4:38 AM when the rooster starts, cackling. What are you gonna do about it?
You get
You
it
need to
too,
remove
Janet?
it,
Just get some.
all the time, all the time.
I know it's a
Common complaints.
problem.
So even 2 acres is an issue for a pet rooster, yeah.
Mhm, yeah. Yeah, so let's keep that in mind.
We're gonna spend a
It's
lot of
not
time
crazy,
figuring out the
it's
rooster
just-
problem, but it's a very unique and special problem to have.
No, it's all day.
It's all
It's all day. and it's,
Yeah.
You never know what's gonna happen, yeah.
Well, they not only crow at the break of dawn, but
Yes.
if you feel their flock is in danger. If there's a fox that runs by or.
So what to do?
I don't know, I don't have, this is not my area of expertise, but I've heard, like Janet has said, I've heard people complaining on one side, they don't wanna hear them, but on the other side, people have a right to farm.
What if you, in the words, where you have the exclusion for roosters, maybe there's an exception for on farms.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. If we want to restrict it just to the farm. it was to the
Yeah,
farm.
what is the definition of farm?
We're trying to figure that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's the next one.
I think it just refers
Someone's gonna
to,
get the call.
well, it
You are.
refers to the ag and markets, I believe. It should.
No, you don't have,
No.
there's no, it's just the ranch.
Like, I'm having trouble figuring out the difference between these two charts.
Right.
Like, you've got domestic ranch animals and domestic farm animals.
Mhm.
And we just.
Right.
Yeah, your ranching is really your farming, we might wanna consider just, because I think, Jan and I were just looking at that, so ranching comes from your original code. So we might wanna just consider changing it to like farming, right, changing it, cause ranching, the definition of ranching says breeding, raising, or managing. Managing an animal farm, this is the original code, in the cases of horses, this would be include the training of horses.
Then we need a definition for an animal farm, then, right?
We
Well-
do, that was one of the
That's
definitions.
your definition of ranching, but maybe we need to like just make it more straightforward.
Like farming and ranching kind of
Yeah.
all encompassing.
So there's no confusion.
Right, riding a cap.
Where's the definition of animal farm?
I think I saw that in,
It was in the.
there's a new definition, right? Yeah.
Really?
Because we're sitting here with the experts and we're still getting confused. Ranching farming.
But it says animal care facilities, but it
Yeah.
doesn't say. and
There's no, right, there is
farm.
no, right, so your ranching definition is your farming definition in your code.
But that refers to something called an animal farm.
Right, on an animal farm, right,
Which we don't have it.
no, there's no definition.
So,
Is there a farm animal? I mean, I don't know. This one I saw.
Yeah, so there's a definition of farm animal, and
Yeah, farm animal.
this is a newly proposed definition.
I mean, you know, what lines do we have available to draw this? We have the ag district. You know, besides that, then we'd be coming up with our own definition, you know, and ag district, it's like, you gotta have
And then-
$10,000 worth of sales, or you gotta
Yeah.
have acres, we're not gonna start doing that.
No,
So.
and
so
you
it
got
seems to
people
gotta
who
be
have
like,
10
if
acres,
It's
but the,
residential and I've got animals, like,
Right.
that's, you know, and just figure that from there.
So there are two different definitions. This is the definition of ranching. It's an existing code provision.
Mhm.
Yeah.
breeding, raising,
But
or managing
Again,
farm
it's referring
animals
to an animal farm,
And
on an
then,
animal farm.
unless we're gonna consult with George Orwell.
Meaning no agricultural, just animals, but you could have both, so.
and then we also have a different definition of farm animal. So these are all things that are considered a farm animal. A farm animal.
You know, and we want to make sure that this doesn't affect riding academies.
There's a definition
No,
of
that's
riding.
sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna jump back to where we were,
What page were we on?
for the definitions.
No, for where we were.
Oh,
40. For the table.
Does anybody have any other ideas other than we're talking about either, you know, a farm for ag district, and then the rest of it is. I'm in a residential district, what am I permitted to do? Is I be keeping animals, like why do we need two charts? That's the
That's, I
case.
mean,
Well,
so this chart would be as an accessory
Accessory.
use to a residential,
Residential.
to a residential,
Yeah.
right.
and then.
The other one was ranching and.
Ranching.
The use that you're going to,
So
so bad use permit from the ZBA, this is your typical homeowner that just wants to have some farm
Sorry,
animals.
then, I didn't get that, do that again.
this is,
There's the ag ranching, and then there's the residential home.
Is that what?
And the
This
residential
is
home
residential.
can have these animals. And this
I'm
is the
good with that,
max.
I didn't know, the one up
The
above
pro-
is ag district.
The one that you're looking at now is.
Is residential.
Residential.
So
And
the
the
one
one
above,
above
the
is-
one above is for a primary, that is the property that is, its primary use is not residential. Its primary use is this ranching use in a residential zone, but
And
Ranching and the raising.
and raising a field, yeah. So that's a primary use permitted in a residential zone. Subject to these restrictions, including the table.
The table.
Yeah, title, yeah.
And you can see, for example, with the horses, it's 2 per acre, whereas the residential, it's 1 per acre.
Right.
So you're
Right.
minimizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep referring to horses because it's come up recently. Thanks.
Yeah, this is just your accessory use. So if you wanted to have some animals on your property.
so this is.
And that's permitted without any
Right, that's as a right.
as of right, yeah.
So this is, the homeowner, I'm gonna
right,
have
you
some
have-
animals.
yes,
The other one, it's an accessory use, no, it's a,
it's a
You're a
special
farmer.
permit, you're a
it's a
farmer,
the other one you need a special permit
From the
for.
CBA,
yeah.
Yeah, or for the ranching
For that,
and to
for
have
that other
those.
chart,
yeah.
Yeah, for the other chart, we are allowed to have, 6 horses on the lot
versus
versus,
special permit use.
You don't necessarily have to be in the ag district, you just need a special use permit from the
Okay,
ZBA.
all right, at least that gives us some distinction there.
So you're telling me that you can have 20 pigs on your property? with no special permit?
No.
This is
That's the
just
other
for all
table.
you can have
Oh,
on your
okay.
property, if you're
Okay.
at residential, if you.
Goats,
Thank
horses,
you.
or poultry, that's it.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's just so we're good.
That's good, and now we're moving on to the schedule regulations for non-residential districts, so everything before this was residential. Now we're in non-residential districts, so this is the campus commercial district. This is just requiring screening, and it should be screened from offsite views. Those changes here. These are just some clarifying edits to the density calculation, providing that it's the maximum allowable floor area ratio. Floor area ratio is a common term, and generally you see all three used, so just make some consistency.
We have a difference in code between campus commercial and commercial.
Campus commercial is a particular zone.
It's a particular commercial zone.
It's
Gold
also,
Bridge.
yeah, it's mainly in Golden Bridge. It's only a handful of
I think it
parcels.
was developed back when we thought we were gonna have these office buildings,
buildings.
you know,
22.
quick access to the highway.
Yeah.
So
22, where like north of Lewisboro Commons actually is, that's remaining is.
Yeah.
That, right?
Yeah, and then there's one on the other side of 684 that's owned by Nice Seg, I think. It's a large
I
parcel.
mean, you can almost think about trying to retire this zone and merge it into.
Well, the zone actually has a lot of permitted uses in it.
Yeah, was it
Right.
Walter built on a commercial?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that
So-
was CC 20.
was CC 20, the Walter project. Yeah, CC 20 parcel.
Wasn't it it was rezoned though, wasn't it?
No,
It wasn't
He
rezoned.
added multifamily to
Yeah.
the commercial.
the zone existed and then multifamily was added. to
Okay.
all the commercials.
Amended. And there, because there were two lots, right?
They
One
felt
had one
lot.
designation and one had the other, and they had to,
One lot, I think the back side of the property was residential, if I remember,
Mm.
the front was CC 20, where the development occurred.
yeah.
We just, yeah, had some minor cleanup here.
But the other parcel is adjacent to it, I think was the DEP parcel, that's
Yeah.
CC 20, right?
Yeah,
Isn't it still DP?
yes.
Yeah, it's still,
Okay, so now we're moving into the service utility districts. I don't believe there were a lot of proposed changes to what has already been proposed here. Actually not. Retail business, so now we're into retail business districts. I think same, there hasn't been a whole lot of proposed changes to what has previously been proposed.
All those things were crossed out because they're
They're on
going
a
into
table.
the
They're going
matrix.
into the-
Yeah, it'd make it easier to.
Going into what?
a table used to.
Oh, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
I don't think there were a lot of new proposed edits to these non-residential districts. This is all talking primarily about the uses allowed in there, and so. There's a lot of changes. So just minor edits. Lot shape. Change, no changes. Minor edits here. And so just for everyone's clarification, subject to the open meetings law, this is discussing about the pre-application process of affordable housing. The subject to the open meetings law has not been forgotten, it was just relocated a couple sections below. Right here. It was, so we just removed those there to make it.
There's also a limitation on the number of people from each board that can attend that pre-meeting, which would eliminate the fact that you have a long meeting.
So here's multifamily dwellings. Just a cleanup of the section title. Here, that's been proposed to be removed concerning water and sewage facilities, so it's now just where there are connections to existing facility. And then just making sure that applicants also submit water and sewer information at the time an application is made for site plan approval. Just so that the board and the applicant, they can have it all ready to go. Beginning for the discussion. Cleanup edit right there in green. More cleanup edits in green. Clarifying edits. Green as well. Page 67. Edits here. So let's scroll a little bit faster. Okay, here's the senior housing floating zone. There were some
Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say if you can give an overview of what that means.
so the senior housing floating zone, it allows the town board to adopt a local law amending the zoning map of the town. And it would essentially create a floating zone that allows there to be senior housing in different areas. So it would actually overlap with existing zones, but it's a kind of a new zone that's also allowed within that area. And so it has to go through all the normal standards and procedures that you would adopt a normal local law. Then the zoning map would be amended, showing that senior housing per these regulations and standards is allowed in that area. So it's a very flexible and versatile zoning and land use development tool that many municipalities have.
So where is it limited in town?
It's all zoning districts, but there are, as you scroll down, you'll see that you have to meet certain criteria in terms of the lot size, et cetera, for to be considered by the town.
Yeah.
That this floating zone is, it's out there as a specified legislative vehicle or opportunity for the town board, but unlike most applications where you're in the zone and you go to the planning board, you go to the ZBA, this one starts with the town board, which has to consider whether to actually say, okay, this property qualifies to be a floating zone, and then changing the map to be the place.
So it's a kind of placeholder for us to use.
It's more of allowing it enabling to have kind of overlapping regulations. So for this particular zone, this particular area wouldn't even, the zone could be in multiple areas of the town per where you receive applications and
Okay.
approve it to be created.
It's an
And so
organized way of being flexible. I mean, in theory, we could go and legislate and change the zoning in a certain area in these ways
yeah, right.
anyway.
Right.
This gives you kind of a template where we kind of agreed up front, like, we're only gonna do this kind of flexible thing for a certain.
It's also-
It's kind of like a catalyst. You gotta have a developer or someone that
That's-
comes in and said, you know, I found this piece of property, or I bought this piece of property in whatever area.
Yeah.
And it's up to them to come to us and say, okay, this property qualifies for us to build affordable senior housing because it ticks all the boxes.
Right.
If it doesn't tick all the boxes, then it's not going in that area. So it really, you need a developer to come and say, this is what I want to do. And then we have to say, okay, it meets the requirements. And that's kind of how it works.
It,
It helps us.
Well, that is how it works.
it's a very proactive
Yeah.
approach to zoning instead of being more, you know.
Restrictive.
Restrictive and changing this area of the town to allow senior housing.
Right.
You need a developer to come and ask you to create it and you would look at it.
So it's from the town board perspective, it's completely,
Discretionary.
It remains discretionary.
yes, in other
Yeah.
words, in
Case
other
by
words.
case basis.
What I'm getting at, there's no way, shape or form that someone who buys a particular parcel, which may potentially. Be viable for senior housing as they see it. They don't have any vested right referable.
They can't,
It's not as
they
of right.
can't, they can't claim that until the town board actually
Yeah, bring suit.
grants,
because we didn't
grants,
approve it.
grants.
And that's because it's a legislative action.
Right.
And so there's no entitlement to
Right.
being within the senior.
We're not required to pass.
It is only within the town
Legislation.
board's legislative discretion.
Right, and we're solid legally on that.
Yes.
We're not violating anybody's rights
Right.
by not passing legislation that allows them to build senior housing in that area.
Hence the word shall.
Yeah.
And floating zones, you'll see these in a lot of different municipalities for all kinds of different purposes. Planned development districts, certain types of commercial,
Transit oriented.
Parking,
Yeah.
transit oriented,
Yeah.
sometimes historic districts as
Right.
well. And it allows you to change it for that area without having to amend the underlying regulations. Or other uses in that area.
So let me ask about that. So there's still, for example, the parking density, right? 2 spots per unit, I think it is for multifamily. So if there's a senior housing floating zone over where somebody wants to develop senior housing, are we still stuck with 2 cars or 2 parks parking per unit? Or is there flexibility? I didn't see that in here.
What is it,
So-
two spots per unit of any unit?
Correct. I believe that's what's in the code now. I may be wrong, but I think that's.
So in other words.
My
two-
point is, if you have
Yeah.
senior citizens, they probably don't have 2 cars.
Right.
So can you be more, less I guess more
If there
More
was twice,
restrictive
that-
with the parks.
around
Yeah.
here, though. The issue is traditionally the other way, because it's not enough spots.
Right.
So there's not. It's per unit without regard to size or bedroom.
I think
I mean,
just
I think
generically,
it just refers to,
It says parking spaces shall be provided in number and design according to the provisions of Article 7 of this chapter.
but let's just take it up a level, just generically, I think the question is like, you have the floating zone, you have the underlying zone. Where those two differ, how do you resolve those?
How do you reconcile?
Right, so I think it's the bottom, when you have a floating zone, the requirements or the standards of that floating zone. Then trump what's underneath of the underlying zone.
Got it.
But if there is no conflict, then, or there's nothing stated in the floating zone, then the underlying zone requirements would. Govern. And then if you found at that point, oops, like, we didn't think about that and it's not gonna work for a senior housing unit. You would, so,
I would think though, if you are establishing the floating zone, you would still retain some legislative flexibility to craft standards.
you're legislating, you could say, we're gonna legislate per the zone. And then
Yeah.
add an addendum, like, oh, in this zone residential, the lighting was such and such, but seniors, we have to have bright lights in a certain place, so we're gonna make it, change things. So that you have that flexibility.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more from a developer perspective, if they want to come in and say, here's a piece of property, I'd like to put some senior housing there. But with the current parking requirements, I can only fit
Yeah, and
30 units.
And they don't
But
drive.
to make this
you know,
profitable,
Maybe.
it needs to have 40 units and less parking. So that's the,
And that apparently would be within our you know, authority to be able to make adjustments like that, because we're legislating.
Well,
But at the same time, we can't violate New York State law, I mean.
But it's not in state law.
No, but what I'm saying is, we do have flexibility in legislation, but we still have guidelines and framework to follow.
We're getting over about this, that's
Yeah.
the same, the whole parking situation is the same with any developer that comes in and decides that they want.
We
The whole parking thing, it's all, you know, and a lot of times when they get in front of the planning board with their plans. And there's there'll be a density bonus, or they pay a rec fee to reduce the amount of parking they're required to provide. There's lots of things that can happen. This is no
Yeah,
different
so,
than that.
yeah, maybe.
And
We're
we
getting
did, and
way
we
ahead.
did,
So
we
we
did
just-
change the multifamily, the parking for multifamily is no longer just 2 spaces for each dwelling unit. It's 1 space per studio dwelling unit, 1.5 for 1 bedroom, 2 spaces.
Yes, you do have the
per
ratio,
living
do have the
room. Right, so
ratio.
it's a little bit, yeah.
Density makes sense, okay.
All right.
We've answered our
Thank you
question.
for that, that's,
And so here for the senior housing floating zone, there was just some, I think relatively minor edit to the development requirements. Just clarifying it's to contiguous acres, clarifying that the permitted density is a maximum of 4 dwelling. So just, it's relatively minor revisions.
Historic, I'm just thinking about like, wasn't there litigation years ago in Somers as far as, I'm blanking on the big in Somers, what was 55 and over this year? I'm just blanking. Heritage, yes, wasn't it, it was initially created as a 55 and over, and then there was some litigation that it couldn't be.
Yeah, the Heritage Hills started construction in 1974. And at that time, they were going to restrict it to a certain, you know, it was going to be retirement age restricted. And there was no provision under federal law and or state law that allowed the imposition of that kind of an age requirement. And the AG came in, sued, and they lifted it.
Oh, so that was,
But-
okay, so now you have.
But now you have the capability to do so, yeah.
Which has been tested, no problem. As far as
They, yeah.
So here are some more just, so these are the sketch plan review, just minor clarifying edits.
Last question, since you're just keep going, but on so in the senior in the senior development, we'll call it, with the floating zone. Can you legally do anything to give any kind of benefit to anybody, first responders, people in town, anything like any kind of priority? Or it's the same way as affordable housing, no different?
No different, yeah.
Okay.
And so here is actually this was a new proposed subsection actually addressing the town board's legislative discretion here. And that nothing here shall be construed as requiring the town board to act. Except if, and then the catch-all, unless it's required, but
right,
we're not aware of anything at the moment that would require action. Minor suggested edits, but just clarifying. And so service utility district, which was reserved this provision because it's been added into existing provisions, same thing with retail business district. So these are just reserved sections of the code now.
For our neighbors at home, reserved means that it's just a placeholder.
Yeah, it's just a drafting tool, so for these examples. The regulations have been folded in under one section, so And that instead of having to renumber and kind of recodify everything and rearrange internal citations, you just reserve that section of the code for a future date if you need to add something into the code, or it
Right.
stays there. They're in the special character overlay district. I don't believe there were any newly proposed changes, so, okay, now we're into supplemental regulations. And starting with special permit uses. So up here, that's just correcting internal citations. So these are special permit applications subject to the town board, no proposed changes. Minor clarifying. Revisions to. Be in accordance with state law, 62 day time frame. And minor suggested revisions here, bottom of page 89. This was just added in to add some flexibility so that the approval agency, whether it be the zoning board or the planning board or the town board, has flexibility to provide a different.
The reason that's there is that oftentimes, a special permit and a site plan application. A wetland permit application, they'll all come in and they get approved, and it's like they're all on different timetables. So the idea is to give the approving agency the capability of just bundling expiration dates on a particular project to one specific date, so. A project doesn't have a potential expiration date for site plan one day and another, it's really an administrative. Ease of administration.
Right. Another section has been preserved, no changes. So these were existing. That have been proposed to be removed. I believe this because they're captured elsewhere.
Hold on a sec, back to that one, you erased religious instruction from the heading, but then in the next sentence, you are including it?
Religious instruction was captured in the definition of place of worship. But maybe that's
Yeah, with the top.
Yeah, so this should be deleted as well.
Good catch.
Might need to just go through and double check the religious institutions that would pop up.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna make a note of that for future reference on that.
Okay.
Read through.
Specialist. So what's the this part where are we talking about dimensions here, minimum for the religious aspect?
Yeah, well, you have it, it's right now you have it so that it's located, it has specific setbacks. It says you can be located in maybe permitted in the residence district, only in locations fronting or having direct access to a major collector road as determined by the planning board and shown on the town development plan map. So that's the additional. And then in terms of like minimum lot area or anything, that we do not have any. We have specific setbacks associated with it, lot coverage.
So if I decide that I'm want to use my house for religious purposes by myself at my townhouse and stop paying taxes because I'm 501c3 not for profit, can I do that under our code?
Well,
Your homeowners
I'll let you-
association might stop you.
Sounds like a good idea.
No, I'm, you know,
There are religious, I mean, there are residential.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, but the other issue is from an exemption standpoint. You know, if it has to be the primary use of the primary use of the property has to qualify for the exempt purpose.
He's a very devout guy.
Yeah.
I'm basing this on some,
This is the flying spaghetti monster case. I don't know if you're familiar. but
no,
there's
this is based upon things that
That
have been
was
addressed
the-
in the
that was
metropolitan
someone
area, but
actually
No, I'm not-
yes, I mean, I think. We recognize that, we didn't go into actually revising your religious regulations. But what we did do is we wanted to peel out like schools and colleges and clearly have this as a separate section, and at some point in time, if the board wants to. Look into this further and have different categories. As like, actual standalone religious versus ones that are within like a home. You can, and there's other communities that have numerous types of residential places of worship versus places of worship. But for right now, you had your places of worship along with schools and colleges, and so we peeled those out of this section.
So next we have, again, this was recreation and fitness, outdoor facilities, some minor changes here. That's it. Major club for facility. Hospitals. Run hospitals. And sanitary facilities. And no changes, and then we have temporary storage of contractors' equipment, and is there any? Any changes opposed to this section, just the title. Same with private kennels, accessory apartments. Some minor. What's this? Yeah, and so a lot of these. Existing code provisions are now recommended for removal because it will be administered, it is administered by Westchester County. And so there's not necessarily a need for it to be under the town's code regulations. If anything, it could possibly add some a little confusion having. Town code provisions on it when it's regulated by the county. So this was.
About
the
Oak Ridge, middle income, those are.
Those are
what
being
the county
administered by the county.
They're administered by the
Yeah.
county. Okay,
Those are different than your AFFH
right,
units.
right, okay.
There's two separate programs.
On the minimum lot area, we had, so we struck the 20 acres, so we no longer need that. Minimum lot area. Here we're in. So it's from 2 to 4, but I think the reason for the 2,
Yeah, so I raised that as one of the
Yeah.
changes that I was.
right,
Because I think the concept of having it 2 times the amount at least allows you to say that you basically could subdivide the property, right? And if at future, 4 times just seems a lot for having like an accessory.
Right. yeah,
used to be a time where, I don't know if it's. Moot now, like there was a time that it's going back a couple of decades where the accessory apartments used to get credit. Like towards affordable housing, that counts. It's going back a couple of decades, we used to get like both. Like a credit as it were for an accessory
They-
apartment.
yeah, I don't think you get any, well, not today, I don't think you
Could,
get credit.
as long as the owners committed to all the criteria, right? They have to sign on to that, whatever it is, 20 years or.
That's to make it AFFH, right?
Right.
Relatively fair, right? So that's a
Yeah.
whole, there's criteria behind that, so.
Right, so that's still.
But theoretically, it does, they typically tend to be less than market rate, it is a way of having some sort of flexibility in affordable housing.
And it's a long-term commitment, right? There's like, for example,
It's
if you're
it's
leasing
essentially a
properties-
policy, something we had on the books to, promote affordable housing within.
But
town.
the value of those has been recognized in the grant program though, very much, right? Where accessory, they're now qualified for,
Well, that's not AFFH.
no, I know that.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
just
just-
saying, like, kind of to your point, being recognized
It's to
as a
promote.
contribution in a sense, like.
Yeah.
I remember back in my housing days.
But here, I think, to your point, Valerie, I think keeping it at 2 times is. Makes sense.
There a consensus? Should we? Switch back to 2?
I'm good with 2.
So I'm just gonna
Was
reject
there any feedback during,
reject that insertion then.
along the way about that?
No, I don't recall receiving any feedback about that particular thing, changing it from 2 to 4. I think that was a suggestion from the planning board.
It's gonna be a significant, potential density increase in town.
Yeah.
Because this isn't an accessory apartment, this is building another standalone home on your property.
Well, it's a smaller dwelling unit though.
Yeah.
I know a number of communities in Westchester County have it, and some have it in much, much smaller lots, and they're doing it above their garages and stuff like that.
But we have accessory apartment provisions already.
I
I'm
mean,
just, so long as the board's aware that it's a significant density change, this is.
Well, I think in terms of.
That's why
but
we
I'm just-
changed it
I
to
wanna
4.
clarify, because in terms of your seeker and
That's
stuff,
what the
it's not,
recommendation was for
it's
the-
not a
so it wouldn't be
significant
so-
density. Increase, because you're not, basically, you don't have a lot of accessory apartments just in general, but also even if you were to bring this in. This does require, board review, and it does require certain, qualifications in terms of like sewer, make sure you
still
have all
have
that.
the buildable area.
But theoretically, if since
I don't
it's,
think so.
since it's 2 times the amount, you theoretically somebody could it's basically no different than if somebody was gonna
But
subdivide that land.
you couldn't,
No.
because you would need, to meet the contiguous buildable area requirements to subdivide. Which isn't included here.
Do we have any idea, we have like, what, 4,000 tax parcels right in town-ish? Do we have any idea how many of those are 4-acre, 2-acre, 1-acre, the breakdown of?
I don't off the top of my head, I don't know.
So I
A
don't
lot
think
of
think
lot of
it's-
districts, I guess.
Right, so you would need, like, in the 4-acre, you would need 8 acres in order to do that. In 2 acres, you would need 4 acres.
Shows they can subdivide and they come in for that, or.
The C says an accessory residence building shall be signed in the manner of the previous subdivision.
Right, so they have
Oh,
to show that.
So
at the
that it's the contiguous.
So
area,
would you
that's
just
counts.
Right. Right, because that was the original.
All right,
chart.
in that case, then,
So the minimum lot of 2, does that mean you have to have 4, is that, no?
Yeah, so if the minimum lot is 2 acres to be able to build 1 resident, you would need 4 acres. in order
And that's
to
what we're
do
talking
that.
about here.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
okay.
and they,
It'd really be more because you need more acreage because the contiguous buildable area generally drive that up.
Right.
wait, but if you need to demonstrate that you would be able to subdivide, then that means you need to meet the contiguous.
You do,
You
right,
do
that's
on
why I
both-
think you'll
on
end
both
up
sides.
with
You might
parcels
just
that
by
are larger
kind of statistically
than
because
double.
you're likely to run into issues. So it's tougher than it looks
Right, is,
to meet that criteria.
right, so in other words, does somebody know going in? I'm using buildable, but it's not, maybe not the right term. In other words, somebody says, okay, I have okay, I wanna subdivide because I want to put portable, whatever I want to do. Getting back to what we were talking about last time, as far as having some kind of heads up, is it, oh, I got all of this land, and then they go, and then they're out of luck as far as it's not buildable.
Yeah, they're usually.
Between wetlands and the impact of everything else, slope, whatever.
That's usually the first thing that someone will look at is the zoning evaluation, right? So they'll. Have somebody. See if they have enough acreage, they're gonna meet zoning, if they're gonna have septic availability, if they're gonna. All that. That'd be like part of your due diligence.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I guess my thought was whether we want to put some kind of modifying word. Of the 2 acres, so somebody's aware of it,
Oh,
2 acres of buildable, developable,
Mm,
something, so.
some qualifying language.
So somebody knows if they're like,
They've
right,
gotta meet the criteria.
Yeah, I mean, it is two subsections right beneath it, so once you're looking at it on E code, it would at least be a lot more. It wouldn't be divided by 2 pages like here on the Word document. On E code, if someone's looking and trying to figure out what they can do, it would be two subsections right below it.
yeah, just some kind of modification, but like Jan's saying, so, okay, you have an idea and then you're going through a preliminary process as opposed to getting. A heads up, right?
yeah,
at
maybe
the
there
code
should
if
be a
we're
second
making.
section that's like just have a pre-application meeting or something like that, so you could. Have somebody help you,
Not even that, just some kind
I
of
mean, that's-
modification.
Doesn't that, I mean, we can do that, we do that today, right? If somebody
Yeah.
has a question, so.
yeah,
Because that would pertain to anything, any section of the code.
Or even a qualification subject to. Standard zoning and planning process or something.
Yeah, but is that a given for anything in our code?
Christian, if you go up to that first paragraph,
Mhm.
I think there's a missing. A minimum lot area of as defined herein, right, so there's,
There's
I
no
don't think you need
number,
as
Yeah.
defined herein any longer.
Yeah.
and you need the word of. Yeah, you do.
Of 2 times, yeah.
Okay,
Cause just reading that, yeah, it arguably is a given, but so you have basically say, okay, I have. The minimum acreage. In which the accessory
What if we
dwelling
put
is
after-
to be
what if we just
located.
put to be located, comma, subject to. You know, B and C.
All applicable
So,
zoning
yeah,
regulations.
And what was the addition?
So.
So I say subject.
Well, shall be
So
subject.
the provisions below or sections below or even, no,
Really,
It's all the zoning.
it's all the zoning, it's gonna be the subdivision
Right.
really,
Right.
and wetland, I mean, it's. It's everything.
I mean, it's essentially like you can do it and as long as you meet it as if you were subdividing. And I wonder if.
That's how I read it.
Yeah.
if
Yeah, I mean,
something-
that's how you originally had it, and we were just trying to reduce the requirements of. Not needing 20 acres.
So, right, so I wonder if in that like introductory paragraph, if that's sort of the spirit of the thing, add some language to that effect, that it is the intent of the town to allow. You know.
Is this-
accessory buildings.
you're reducing the threshold. Acreage, but you're not doing anything else. Is
But
really,
basically, it's like
Yeah.
you're retaining ownership, but other than that, it's just like you were subdividing.
I think the minimum lot area. Was important because. You know, you have some zoning districts in town that are very small, right? I mean, they're down to. Less than a quarter acre, so to have 2 homes on. A small lot. Would be,
But then you have all the other setbacks and things like that, right, that would prevent you from doing that.
maybe,
tiny home.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and
My
for
expansive
those,
0.02
all
of an
lot
acre.
yard and bulk requirements of that zoning district shall apply to the accessory residence.
Because then you also have septic limitations as well, right? Because it's based on bedroom
Well,
count.
that's the other thing. I mean, if you say you have to subdivide it, does that mean they have to be on separate septics? Because you would never be able to,
Fit.
you'd never be able to subdivide a property where the two homes were on a single
Yeah,
septic
but I think
system.
it just says that it shall be cited in the manner that would permit future subdivision. I don't think it necessarily says it has to comply.
Right, but would you have to prove out that you could have separate septic? systems?
And instead of
Yeah,
side on the
probably,
drawing,
yeah.
this is where.
Which is, you could even cite even easier as more, you know, is referenced within the balance of 20, the code 2220, something even.
I mean, this is one where I recommend, like, let's just see if it becomes a problem, like, you know, because I think you've had it on the books for so.
Yeah,
I
and
don't know if anybody's
it
really even
really
thinking
wasn't
it is a list.
utilized, right?
So
It's
like,
been a couple
if,
times.
right,
One or two, but.
so, right, so I mean, I'm just,
It was written for a particular
Big plot,
case.
so.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go with that.
because it always can easily be amended, if for some reason something does become before the board and there is like an issue, then
Right.
that could be something that.
I think there's more of a tendency to want to go ahead and subdivide, like people do this because like they want to sell off a piece and.
Yep.
You know, improve their financial position.
Right, because there is a maximum of like only 1,500 square feet, right, in gross floor area, So it's, it's not a very large home.
So,
Per unit.
the prohibition of other permitted accessory uses that was proposed to be deleted from the code, and it has been subsequently recommended for re-inclusion. And so this provision currently exists in the town code. And it, in essence, provides that once you have an accessory residence dwelling, you can't have other accessory uses. For example, you can't have also an accessory apartment.
Right.
Got it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you can have recreational, you can have a tennis court or something.
For a farm stand.
If it fits.
I'm standing with the sleeping bag.
Okay. It's
Okay, moving on. Now we're at telecommunications facilities.
Yeah,
So this is where
this
a
is
lot of
everything
the,
got-
yeah, a lot of the yellow that you saw in the definitions have been moved here. So there was no proposed changes to the beginning portion of this, and I don't think there were many substantive changes. It was just kind of a
Shift.
yeah, exactly. Reshuffling and putting them here. So here are these definitions. So these definitions apply for this section and this section only. And so these are all the same definitions that the town board had previously reviewed. Except for,
No changes moved over into its own section.
yeah, and so eligible support structures is a new proposed definition. The town was not previously reviewed.
Just to encompass what may be coming down the line as far as technology goes.
And an eligible support structure is important when you're talking about co-location.
Mhm.
Putting on a telecommunications facility onto an existing one and just making sure that it,
That everyone plays nicely together.
yeah.
We're getting the terminology with the smaller cell tower, does the smaller, the mini,
Small, small cell or
So.
that's, I don't remember, it said expressly, does that come within that?
It's right there.
definition?
right here. Yeah,
Maybe
small,
shock.
Okay, there's,
small,
Alright.
also, yeah, and so it goes through the definitions, and
Okay.
there's been no subsequently proposed changes to the original
Alright.
proposed definition.
Oh my God.
And stealth technology is just making it look like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
Somebody had fun coming up with that word for the definition.
Hmm. Parts that are struck or removed because
They're existing,
they're already,
they're existing and they're basically being updated or they're obsolete. Paracommunications, that's a new proposed definition, but that's just consistency. To assist with implementation. Okay, now we're getting into exemptions. No proposed changes to exemptions than was previously proposed. Yeah, yeah, I don't think so. Okay, so I'm gonna roll through these. Let's see anything highlighted.
Interesting that you put that up today.
Big section.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
there's only so much red line moving around that I could read 200 pages in one sitting. I was trying to break it down and it was very difficult to get through it all.
take a break to change the laundry into the dryer. So.
Yeah. It's all about us.
3 times.
And I believe there's been any new proposed changes to these provisions of
No.
the code. Breakfast establishments, so just remove the residential. So minor. No need to really essentially say this because it operates automatically. If you need a variance. If there's any edits here, schools, private and public. No changes, and then so we get to accessory winery, accessory microbrewery, accessory craft distillery, so these were I think accidentally deleted because the definition was accidentally omitted from the beginning, so it's been
Right,
added back
been added
in
back, yeah.
for consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing to this.
Stagger.
Yeah, and same thing with the schedule of uses, once we get there, it was removed there because it was accidentally omitted from the definition, so it was, why do we have a term here that's not defined, and it's been corrected subsequently, right? Oh, this is just recognizing that gas stations have been prohibited, and so if you're going to modify or expand comma there. Large must be permitted. So I don't think there's any other proposed changes. These are more minor consistency edits. Site development plan approval. So this is the multifamily zoning district. I again don't believe there are any or major proposed changes. So we're still on the site development application.
62 days to line it back up with the state.
Yep. Same consistency edits, state law. The slight changes in terminology, I believe, to conform with the definitions used beginning of the code. The zoning code. But no substantial changes. Clarification edit there, so it's just not materially affecting. So they submit paper and digital copies. As well as they, any plans or technical reports are signed and sealed by a design professional. There were major changes to even site plan development standards. And then, so there are some changes to the submission requirements. So this is what's required to be shown on a site plan when it's submitted. And so these are all pretty standard that you'll find in a lot of municipalities, pretty common items that need to be shown on a site plan.
Sure.
These also help applicants and their design professionals as well to make sure that they get it on the site plan in the first instance and don't need to, you know, come back for multiple meetings just to add things to the site plan.
I was gonna say that, so the
Reduces the comments.
the purpose was just to clarify what exactly is needed when they submit a site.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because you know, this way an applicant or their professional is on notice of what needs to be shown on that
Right.
site plan, so when they submit it, hopefully they now have submitted a full application.
And to your point, it cuts back on the.
Yeah, and it cuts back on the number of times that they need to
Yeah.
basically come before the board or submit it plans.
Right,
Just for, you know, basically revising to include more standard
Mhm.
information.
right.
It's really for everyone's benefit, especially the applicants. And we are getting close to the end of the zoning chapter.
This is 50 pages though.
Actually, 30.
Yeah, a couple of them are just the boilerplate local law stuff, so. So that's proposed to be removed. And I think that's in recognition that there could be waivers or shared parking or variances. There we go for some parking.
We talked about the down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Just making sure that bed and breakfast establishments are included in here.
Mhm.
Again, removing clubs because that's covered under, well. The equivalent, I believe the intent was for the recreation and fitness centers.
Mhm.
Hell, that was been added back in. So there's some parking standards, medical. This was revised to, I think, be consistent with generally other offices and other similar types of professional office type uses. Restaurants with 10 or fewer seats. And then schools and schools, at least, this is the exact same parking requirement, one space per 200 square feet of floor area. That is the requirement in 200-40.15E. So it's just easy, so it's twice in the code, but it makes it easier for someone reviewing the code.
For public schools, is that under our code? I thought it was they followed state board.
Yeah,
of Ed.
It's state, it's subject to state education.
City education, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But we still have it here as part of our code?
Well, because it applies to public and private,
Public and private.
Right,
but we can't enforce public school.
right.
So why would he?
Yes, I guess the question is why even say public? I guess it doesn't hurt to, but we don't have any
Or I just leave it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Leave it then, yeah.
Yep, now we're in EV charging stations.
This is new,
This is new. This is all new.
right?
Well,
The-
it's not all new from, this is already part of the proposed changes
The proposal.
originally, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, I mean,
You've already
new, it's.
seen
it's
it.
new.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you've already
yeah.
seen this, yeah.
So.
Yeah,
so
we've seen this already.
Yeah,
Right,
EV
so-
charging stations, it's
Yeah.
already been a part of the proposed local law. I don't believe there were any
No changes since,
any changes.
yeah,
Since the last time we saw it.
It's just to the definition, right?
Yeah, just the definition of the amperage, moving that, so it's tied to the voltage,
mhm,
amendments. I don't think there's been any major changes here. Yeah, so here is just clarifying that if you're gonna, if you're within a potentially area under consideration for rezoning. That notice needs to be sent to only those areas,
Mhm.
only those people who are subject to the potential rezoning.
Right.
And a lot of this is. Set forth under state law, but
Mhm.
it's convenient to also place it in the town zoning code as well.
Right.
Don't think there were any major changes here. Than what was previously reviewed. Now we're in cluster development. We're gonna be the zoning limitations, so it's just.
mhm.
So this is, you know, we're moving into solar energy systems. This is different than battery storage
Mhm.
systems. And no changes.
Yeah.
Hey,
Again,
Any proposed changes here, right?
no,
So we'll just, and there we go, that's the boilerplate, local law. Language, and we have made it through proposed changes to the proposed law concerning chapter 220 zoning.
Hmm,
Okay,
I'm sure it was
Alright.
just as exciting for everyone at home as it was for us.
if they're still tuned in.
So maybe we should do schedule of uses quickly, because that just
Yeah, that's
ties
quick,
in,
right?
that ties in with zoning,
That's a good idea.
What are we doing?
Schedule of uses.
schedule of uses. Okay. Stop sharing for a quick second.
that's the table of uses, right?
Yeah, I believe it's attachment 5,
Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
which is a change. It was proposed to be attachment 3, but just for ease
Here
of
we go.
amendments
Got it.
to be attachment 5.
yeesh, okay.
Okay. Group home, it would be a special permit, and I believe this was a consistency edit, because it was already like that in the code.
Wait, say
Yeah,
it again,
and-
it's a what?
So
Consistency.
Consistency, okay,
And to confirm it's a ZBA special.
got it, yep.
yeah,
Okay,
so
yeah.
here there's a little key that helps with understanding. So P just means it's a permitted use as of right. A means it's an accessory use. SP is a special use permit by the planning board. SPT is the town board. SPZ is the zoning board. And so there's various approval authorities for different types of uses. Animal care facilities, I think that was another one that was already put in the code, but just adding it here into the attachment for ease of reference. Level 3 EV charging stations, that's also been added in here. Again, as just for ease of reference, it's already in the code as this.
The level 3 is the high speed charging, right?
The accessory building for approximate full out with principal should be AL. Down at the bottom, it's just slide right there.
Oh, principal, yeah, right.
Okay. So microbrewery and craft distillery, this just ties back into adding it back because the definition was inadvertently omitted. But there's been no changes to the where it's permitted by special permit. EV charging stations. And so that. And it's just the approval authority, so they're permitted as an accessory in all districts. Yeah, solar panels has been removed because they're the tier 1, 2, and 3. Everything of rooms has been removed. Temporary stands. Or, oh, should we do
Yeah,
the
maybe.
stands for the seasonal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be consistent.
Stands for the seasonal sale.
Seasonal sale. That is it. Or the attachment. Okay,
Excellent.
gonna move on.
This is good, having this thing.
Yeah, it's very helpful. It allows staff and applicants and residents to just pull up one document and see what's allowed and what isn't, or if it is allowed. Do I need a special permit?
Where do I start?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and the schedule of uses is a great place to start.
Right.
But it's called table of use.
It's called what?
Table of use, not schedule.
Yeah, table of uses, it's table or schedule of uses are kind of used interchangeably, but here it's formally called the table of
Permissive use.
uses.
Don't use it that way. Permissive use is something that's. Thanks.
Okay.
It's a table.
So here is excavation and fill, so this is a brand new chapter to the town code. It would be a new chapter 115. So outside of zoning. And so there's been so here, if you see anything that is, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit just for ease. Must be able to view it. So if you see that it's a different, if it's not a black line, it's a different color, kind of like it's a tan color that is new proposed revisions.
But that's not, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, that's for any board.
Yes,
It's proposed.
yeah, during that
Okay,
process,
yeah,
so
yeah.
because this one, the edits were a little bit more compact and only 8 pages, they're not highlighted, they're just shown by a different colored text. And so anything that is not black letter is a change.
So how are we gonna, we have the Jan gave the potential alternatives and stuff.
That's for these steep slopes.
Yeah, right.
But you gave input on this as well, right?
So steep slopes is a different,
No, I know, I was asking, I thought Jan also gave some input to our supervisor regarding this provision, this code as well, but I could be mistaken.
I think at our last meeting, you had
have some thoughts. I didn't put
Yeah.
anything to paper.
No, I
Yeah.
didn't think that you did. I thought it was just conversation.
Yeah, mainly around the quantities.
Quantity.
Yeah.
I think your recommendation was like 60?
Sixty would come to the planning
No.
board, but I think
What
there's
else?
a larger,
Thought I remember 500.
Those are the steep slopes.
Yeah, that's for a disturbance on
So-
the steep slopes.
So here's the thing, here's the problem that I had with these two provisions. I know right now we're only dealing with excavation and fill. We're going from no regulation to some pretty significant regulation. Right out of the box, like overnight, with a lot of change, and I think that's a problem. And it's not like just saying, oh, if you bring in over this amount, then you need a permit. It's pretty extensive. And I went back and forth because obviously my experience in applying the zoning code in Harrison is quite different than what Lewisboro looks like. It's a completely different landscape altogether. So I feel very uncomfortable going so regulated and just. So my thoughts were, and then I thought about what we talked about, how one of our neighboring towns, they go by setback, like as long as the fill is brought in and it's not within a certain distance from the property line of your neighbor, or, you know, setbacks from, you know, then, you know, but here in town, we're dealing with, you know, postage stamp size pieces of property, right? And then we go to acres of property where, you know, you can have a neighbor and you don't even know that their house exists on the neighboring property because it's like several acres in. You know, and I think it's very difficult to hold all those properties to the same standards, so I really think we need to simplify this a lot more. This is just in my
You go
opinion.
up to the top of the
And-
legislative, yeah.
You know, I'm thinking, you know, anything over 500, no, this is a lot. Anything over 500 cubic yards needs a permit. And needs to provide proof that that's clean fill coming in, and but then I thought, I was thinking boundary wise, like there's some things that we touch on here in this proposed regulation that I think are important. I think it also has to do with where the fill is going. Whether it's going within a certain border from your neighbor's property, from the street, from a wetland, or a, you know, that, you know, then that's important. But if you're bringing in, for argument's sake, 500 cubic yards of topsoil into a 20-acre property, I don't really see the issue unless it's like over a certain amount. You want, I mean, the most important thing here is that we have clean fill being brought in. I mean, out of all the things that we may be, you know, I understand regrading of property can be bad if it affects neighboring properties, if it affects wetlands and water courses and things of that nature. However, the most important thing that you want to make sure is not happening is the bringing in of garbage. And, you know, dumping it in the middle of Lewisboro, that's a problem. And for the most part, we heard from a lot of business owners in town that do this on a regular basis, and we know them all, and they have really great reputations, and it's not them that we have to worry about. It's the one-off contractor that's brought in from the outside that, you know, does work in other places where, you know, things like this aren't maybe such a big deal, or they just go, you know, people turn their head. I mean, that's the most important thing. So I think we really need to find a really good balance, because I think this is just too severe.
Well, if this wasn't here, okay, and the thing you're trying to put that, somebody was putting in, I don't know what the right term is, unclean fill
So, right,
on
contaminated.
contaminated fill. And there was a complaint about contaminated fill today. Would there be anything in legislatively or regulatory wise that the town would be able to do to address it
Well,
successfully?
I think a town engineer would have to go in, and there would have to be a plan developed by which the removal of the contaminated fill is accomplished. Sometimes in the environmental
That's the,
protection agency comes in and
that's
they
the
oversee.
remediation, but I'm saying at the initials, somebody has hey, somebody calls up, whoever they call up, they call up the building department, they say, Kevin, my neighbor is putting in a bunch of really dirty fill, contaminated fill.
Take it one step back.
Yeah.
Bringing in fill, okay? You really need to know the origin, where it came from, right out of the box, okay? Most municipalities do require that, okay? And then, if it's not, let's say if it's not coming from our own town, coming from Tony's lot, from going to your house, you know, then you, at least you know the origin and where it came from. Coming from another municipality, then you need to test it, you need to certify it.
Or there's gotta be a certification, and even that's questionable sometimes.
So is
Well,
it, so
yeah,
for
manifest.
a licensed contractor, any contractor locally, right?
We should know that.
No, well, they should know it, but I'm saying, is it a violation of the law if a contractor, any contractor in town locally was bringing in contaminated fill?
Yes,
Yes, it's illegal dumping.
It's a violation of the environmental conservation law.
Right, not
The
local code.
quality of the film.
Right, but I think,
Quality of
It's
the
not a local code violation, it's a state code
field.
violation.
right,
Which
the
is-
bigger question is though, if somebody brought the fill in, would they even have to be required to test it right now under your town code?
No,
No,
Right, so there's things you don't know if
There's no
it's
trigger for
contaminated,
it.
so somebody could call and say, I think it's contaminated, and the building inspector would not be able to say, well, that person has to test it.
Well, then, so if
Correct.
the main idea here is to make sure you have clean fill being brought in. Separate and apart from capacity of the amount, can't you put a threshold burden on somebody to establish that fill that's coming in is clean?
okay, there are regulations that can be put into place,
But
that's
it's
what
not-
John and I were talking about, there's manifests, there's certifications that where they're getting the fill from is clean, you know, unfortunately. Some of that even documentation sometimes come up is invalid and it is what it is, but that's the only due diligence.
And
But
how
the
can you,
objective here
and how can you show it though? In other words, let's say I hire a contractor, and I expect they're gonna put clean fill in there, even as a customer, right, a homeowner. How can is there an objective way or verifiable way to say that I have a,
There's a couple things. Jan does a site plan review, okay? And it doesn't call for importing of material to the site. That would be red flag number one, okay? So if it says it was a balanced cut and fill on the site, at least you know everything that's there was originally from there. If it's a deficit and it calls for it to be imported, you can either have a note on the drawings saying that all imported fill needs to be certified and documented on word source. That may be one way to do it, you know, that doesn't put a limitation on how much it's establishing a baseline right out of the box.
That's if it's a site plan.
That's, I was gonna say.
If there's a site plan,
You know, the weekend
This is-
warriors.
Well, no,
Story,
and
yeah.
this also applies to people who are doing groundwork. Now, there's all sorts of exceptions down here if you go down a little bit further, but this is if somebody decides that they want to do something on their property that doesn't require a site plan. But might require, I mean, you just said maybe 500 cubic yards. I think that's 25 dump trucks. I mean, that
Yeah,
seems like,
it's 25
seems-
trucks.
that seems like a lot. I mean, you might wanna go
that's
more
what,
than
500?
50, you might wanna go
20-yard
100.
dump truck.
20 yards capacity, cubic yard each truck, like a roll.
That's well,
That's-
easy visual, you know, you know how big a 20-yard dumpster is, I mean, that's a
Yeah.
good, you know, there's a 20, there's a 40. That gives you.
but I mean, there's also a difference between bringing in, you know, even for argument's sake, 250 cubic yards of fill to a property that's 10 acres or 20 acres versus a property that's 4 acres like mine, right? There's a big difference because the amount of fill that you're bringing in is going to make a bigger difference on a smaller piece of property versus you know, arguably on a bigger piece of property. For instance, if they, you know, you're on a 15-acre piece of property and they want to maybe level out an area for whatever, they're gonna put in raised beds or something like that. Chances are, nobody's gonna notice, nobody's gonna see it, and it's not within, you know, it's in the middle of their property, but someone who wants to put a raised bed on a property size of mine, 4 acres, it could affect your neighbors, it could affect, you know, this is a smaller piece of property, bringing in the same amount of fill. So it's like, in Lewisboro, we are so diverse with the sizes of our property and the topography of our neighborhoods, that it's difficult to find a standard that makes sense across the board, if that makes sense.
And based on like the neighbor municipalities, they don't have a standard.
No, well, Pound Ridge doesn't have a limit, they have a buffer,
Actually,
isn't that?
fill and excavation needs approval from the town board, period.
Yeah, Pound Ridge is town board.
They're very restrictive.
You
Yeah.
could do a sliding scale.
And this does have exceptions for lawns and gardens, so if you're doing something like you were just saying, to put in raised beds or gardens, it's exempted in a section further, a little bit further down here.
Bedford requires special permit for any landfilling or excavation.
And you do have an exception for where where a building permit is already being, this is already part of the building.
I'm gonna scroll down.
That-
to the-
Bedford-
I'm
Bedford's
gonna
tough,
scroll down
though.
to the exception.
So again, I got,
North Set, well.
Bedford's tough in the fact that you're dealing in Bedford, they've got highly densely populated areas, huge commercial. Mixed use, I mean, and then there's parts of Bedford that are
Yeah, yeah.
sprawling farms, so it's.
so,
So
yeah.
North Salem, it's 250 cubic yards.
well, that-
Above that, you need a permit.
So, yeah, Jan, is there,
Yeah.
and I said,
Seems
I
like a
touched,
happy medium.
I touched
Yeah.
before on the steep slope aspect of it. Is there a problem, in, you know, your experience, institutional memory, that the town needs to address, that without this, we wouldn't be able to? Like, what's the problem, again, legislatively, for something we've never had before, that we need to address and put this into effect?
Yeah, like, why can't we just leave the way it is?
I think the first paragraph is, if you scroll up, that's where.
No, actually, but actually, it's terribly redundant. It's based, it says health, safety, and welfare, like twice in the same paragraph, and it's not, but
Erosion,
again,
siltation, flooding.
okay, so again, that's a concept, right? Truth, justice, and the American way. It's a good thing we should all advocate for, but the question is, in Lewisboro, I'm asking based upon professional experience, you know, zoning and, you know, the planning experience here and all the applications over a period of years. Hey, if you said to me, listen, there's a recurrent issue where we found in Lewisboro, there's applicants, or there's a lot of calls, or there's a lot of problems where we've had a lot of contaminated fill. There's a run on this, or we've had
What's
a
the
lot of
problem we're trying to fix?
right, the
Is there
same thing, right,
any-
or we've had in based upon certain parts of town, there's been continuous problems with erosion. So again, because again, as opposed to creating legislation, and then as Janet was talking about, let's put a bunch of exceptions for things like gardening and all. So again, does the exceptions swallow up what we're looking to do? Again, the point is, what are we looking to do that has to be legislatively, you know, addressed? If it is something, like I said, same thing with the steep slope, you know.
One of the common ones are wetlands being filled on weekends.
Yeah.
Expanding their rear yards into that fragile area. You know, I think where the material's coming from, especially there, it's very insensitive. But we've had, at least in my tenure, multiple times where people have literally filled in wetlands, built new stone walls and recaptured areas of, you know, yards that were not their yards.
So what about
that-
something that's a little more simple, saying that a permit's required for any amount over 250 cubic yards? And it's required that when it's over 250 cubic yards, they require a permit, which requires them to provide proof that it's clean fill coming in. And then and also And if it's less than 250 cubic yards, if it falls within a particular buffer, like within a certain distance from the property line, from a wetland, and then leave it at that.
Within a wetland buffer, no matter the extent of the quantity of the fill, it's gonna need a permit.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So
That's
even
what I'm
if you're
saying.
doing that.
So anything over 250 cubic yards requires a permit, period, plus with certification that it's clean fill. But then if it falls within an area of a property line, of a wetland, of, you know, a buffer, then it also requires a permit without it needing to exceed the 250 cubic yards.
Yeah,
You understand what I'm saying?
yeah, the wetland piece is already covered.
Which is, I'm just,
Right, so if somebody's doing a weekend warrior, they're bringing stuff into an area. So you're basically saying, okay, I can't trust the homeowner on getting a reputable contractor as far as what they're putting in there, which is, you know, for their own,
happens all the time.
their own property. But the second part, the wetlands, if they're doing that, then we have.
Yeah, you have the.
We have-
And that's what I'm saying, and you know, and to protect, you know, neighbors, or, you know, if it's within a certain buffer from the property line, from the roadway. Regardless if it's over 250 cubic yards or not, you still need to come and get a permit, because then you're potentially affecting other things within the property. And if you're bringing it into the middle of your property, it's not within the buffer, and it doesn't then I think that 250 cubic yards
Yeah,
without a
and
permit
if
is a
somebody-
fair number.
And if somebody's doing something like the weekend warrior that are putting something that's intentionally in wetlands.
Mm.
And I know this from my planning board time,
Yeah.
we've always focused on the remediation because. All the wetlands violations that were there were essentially seemingly innocent. Aside from, I think maybe one or two where somebody knew they were doing it. But the planning board has the opportunity to address, you know, the penalty aspect of it accordingly.
I wanted to just let everybody know, so technically, right now in your code. Section 220-34 does have landfilling, regrading, and removal of earth material provisions. And it does require, ironically, approval from the town board. I think when we were reviewing this, it was clearly a section that isn't really being enforced because it's like, there's a lot of exceptions, and then it says, oh, but anything else falls under this, like, this category. And so I think the plan was the intent was to actually like develop something that works, right? So I think no matter what, you probably will want to come up with something that's going to work for the town as opposed to.
What is that other
What was that
220 have?
That was removal.
Yeah, we did remove it.
No, I
No,
thought you meant it
sorry.
was removal of,
It says landfilling, regrading, and removal of earth material.
Pretty much.
So it does include landfilling. Originally,
What's the
220-34.
trigger? What's the quantity?
So there is no quantity except it says, notwithstanding the following regulation, homeowners or property owners may conduct regrading, earth moving, excavation and filling operations. It may utilize gravel, stone, or quarry where it is required as part of an approved subdivision, stormwater pollution prevention plan, wetland permit approval, site development plan, or special use permit approval, or in connection with the construction of a building or driveway for which a permit has been duly issued, or where it's required in connection with incidental landscaping or minor improvements such as constructions of walls, retaining walls, fences, and so forth.
It's
And it says provide no other permits or approvals required by this chapter, and it says written application requesting approval for any land filling, regrading, or earth removal operations not permitted by right as described above shall be submitted and subject to approval of the town board.
So that's even more comprehensive than what you're contemplating by the new legislation with the exceptions.
Right, because it's pretty much, but I think the concern was that some of the stuff is not like, you know, when you're developing some of these
That's
retaining
more
wall and stuff, right?
More restrictive.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
on you're not, it wasn't trading it, was it? It wasn't taking that out and putting this in the well, was it?
So we
I
were,
think it was.
yeah, we're recommending removing this because there was a lot, I think when we were looking through these requirements, there was a lot of confusion as to what really triggered it, what didn't trigger it, and there seemed to be a lot of exceptions that.
I don't know of any application that's ever been made to the.
Right, no, that's right, and
I'd
that was,
say
and that
it
was.
should
part of
either
the
go
conversation.
to
Right,
consulting engineer or building.
Right.
So it's sounds like this may be an enforcement issue. You have something on the books already.
You should maybe take do you want to see the regrading issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does the town board want to see those type of applications or?
Probably not.
Building inspector?
Probably not.
No, the town board shouldn't do
Timing
it.
wise, it doesn't work either.
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't, right,
Yeah.
so I think that's my, I just wanted to give a little background as to the
It's
reasons.
the same
for
type
that,
of theory
right.
though, because it's saying like, if you needed if you had a project that involved any
Yeah, some
sort of
approval.
Right.
Well, couldn't you say you could go and get a permit from the building department up to a certain amount, and any amount over that has to go for site
Yeah,
approval?
you could do
That's what I
that,
was
yes,
thinking.
absolutely.
And that way it makes it a little easier, and
Get some
we'll
eyes on
give
it.
Kevin more work because he doesn't have enough to do, right?
Right.
If you have an administrative threshold is what you're getting at.
Yeah, so it goes to the building department, let's say up to 250 cubic yards, and then after 200 cubic yards, then they have to make an application.
So do we,
50 cubic yards is still.
250.
12 dump trucks or something.
But it's
And
still being
again-
seen, yeah.
But
Right,
it's
again,
still
as you
within
said
the
before,
average for the surrounding areas, but
I would say it's what you were saying, that maybe it's some kind of sliding scale, because you put 12 dump trucks worth of stuff on one of the postage stamp
Correct.
lots. You build it.
Correct.
Has that,
It's still-
have you ever known that to happen, Dan? Ever in your whole lifetime of being here?
yeah.
Okay.
Golden Bridge, that one incident.
Who would want
I mean,
that?
it was.
No, I
The
know.
one-
It was
the one- the
significant
one-
amount of-
By Mercedes, yeah.
Yeah,
And
significant
it was,
amount.
and it
Was
wasn't clean either.
There is a case where
Right now.
they unclean topsoil or dirt
Phil,
and on a steep slope. Then they created a plateau.
Who did?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter who, we're not,
Doesn't
we're
matter.
not here to throw names
Private, no, I
around.
mean, private. I don't know who, I mean.
That it would require a permit for Kevin, so up to 250 cubic yards, so.
And that might still be too
Yeah,
restrictive,
but
but
at least it's getting eyes on it. And sometimes there's cases where there's a building department review. That Kevin, if it was some sort of crazy application, he always has the ability to refer it to a board.
yeah,
If it was some obscure thing, but yeah, that could.
Why wouldn't you bracket it and have anything, above? It's not anything up to 250, but have a minimum to 250. It gives some leeway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like 60 to 250 or 50 to 250.
Right.
Yeah.
no, yes, I kind of overstated, I didn't intend to say that anything from 0 to 250 has to go through the building department, yes.
Yeah, similar
But
to
I
the,
don't think every single time they
those
wanna
of
bring in
us-
fill, it needs to go to the planning.
For those of us who live on postage stamp sized places,
Yeah.
less than 60 would be enough to,
Correct,
So then we do it to Dan's point, we have a sliding
sliding
scale.
scale,
Then you add a chart, you put a chart based on zoning, quarter acre can't exceed X. Half acre is Y, an
Just like
acre
we
is
did
Z,
with
and
the-
that's not that hard, it really isn't.
But are we gonna be requiring the certification or the source or whatever?
I mean,
It has to be
You're
clean.
you're crazy not to get certification for stuff that's not, if it's coming from outside source. I mean, I can give you nightmares in Armonk that they're going.
So you have the
through right now.
we
50,
don't need nightmares, thank
Yeah.
you.
so you have, you do that's the slide, so you have 50, say you start at a quarter and then you slide it up, that 2 acres is
Yeah.
250 or 300, which then triggers a non-administrative process.
I mean, that might be the easiest way and it addresses everybody. I mean, 50 or 60 yards on a quarter acre, still that's 3 20-yard dumpsters. That's still a lot of
A lot of
dirt. Yeah.
those, yeah.
Yeah.
And.
but it's not that much on 10 acres.
No.
And all the exemptions still apply.
Right.
So that if somebody is worried about grading their driveway,
Do you still need to have a steep slope threshold as well?
We're not there yet.
Where
No,
this is
no,
not
this is still
steep.
fill, but in this, that's, yeah. You have some.
Like 50 for a quarter, 100 for a half, 150 for an acre.
For example, in
250
North
for-
Salem, the slope, the proposed finish slope is not, that's the proposed finish, does not exceed 15%. So if they're filling, they can't create a slope, I guess, what I'm saying.
Can't create a slope,
Right.
fill,
Hmm.
that exceeds a certain,
Correct, yeah. Cause then you got stuff.
Then you've
falling
got
to your
everything.
you know,
neighbors.
erosion issues.
So I think, well, maybe you're encouraging people to come in because it's administrative, so. At a quarter acre, 50 cubic yards, half acre, 100. Acre, 150, 2 acres, 250. So meaning if you're in a 4 acre, it's gonna automatically. The amount that's involved automatically be not administrative.
No, not necessarily. If they bring in less than,
Right.
They don't require anything.
right.
All right, so,
It'll make your life a lot easier, just will, by having a spreadsheet.
do we add that to, do we go back and keep what we have in the code? And just.
Where does that
reference
live,
this
that section? Is that in the, that's in the zoning?
It's out, yeah.
220-34.
It's all part, I mean, because it's like, kind of.
Landfilling, regrading, yeah, maybe you just. Yeah. That's that section.
Yeah.
I'll talk to some of our
And the gardening wouldn't trigger the
business
50.
people in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that way it doesn't trigger having to go and visit Kevin, although I'm sure they all love to go visit Kevin. And up to a certain point, and then after that, when it exceeds a certain amount, they're gonna have to go to the planning board for site approval.
And keep in mind, if you're tied up on this, you want to refine it. This doesn't stand in the way of proceeding on the other rules.
Right. Mhm.
You don't have to hold on, if you're comfortable with the zoning chapter, if you're comfortable with. The the simple ones, those can all get advanced while we try to iron.
This is your severability point.
And this doesn't really tie back to the comprehensive plan, right?
No, I mean, I think this was really
20
more
stuff.
of like, this
Yeah.
was something that everyone came across and.
Yeah.
Felt that. So, yes, I mean, and I'll leave it up to you whether we should keep that one section in for now, if we decide to separate it.
It's marked for reserve, right?
Yes, yes.
So I mean, theoretically, if the zoning law is adopted. And it's deleted and reserved, that the town board.
220-34, whatever it was.
The town board could, craft through those regulations and then insert it into that reserve section,
Or-
basically starting anew or
Create a separate chapter.
create a separate chapter.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So just like we did the telecommunications, just pull that one out for
Yeah.
identification, but a short
Yeah,
one.
I'm just thinking in terms of the excavation issues that we at least see on the plan, it's always tied to wetlands. It's always.
Right. It's not surprising.
Yeah, it's always, the fill work that gets done, there's a violation issue.
But by putting the
Yeah.
sliding scale, maybe it addresses part of what Kevin sees, that it's a smaller thing that's.
Oh, no,
gonna tie into.
I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, in terms of,
The
maybe
issues
I'm
that
wrong,
are-
but in terms of an immediate concern or, something needs to be addressed. Right,
It's the wetlands.
I mean, the wetlands piece is gonna pick up a lot of this,
Yeah.
and that's not gonna.
Okay. That's good.
All right, so
So I'm not clear, are you gonna leave it as it exists in the zoning code now? And then replace, and then later take that out and put this new code in, or? Are you leaving it as reserved in the?
Since it's clear that through the years, whether, during Kevin's tenure and before, this provision hasn't been enforced. So and I don't want to all of a sudden start enforcing it in the interim. So my thought is cut it out and let's rebuild it and put it back the way that we want it, because I don't want to put Kevin in the position of enforcing something that hasn't been enforced and then us creating issues when we're trying to fix that problem
Yeah.
that's creating issues.
So maybe Kevin, you take the 220-34 language, and then you add the scheduling thing, and then that gives us a draft
Yeah.
as far as. The
And in the
carve out.
meantime, we carve it
You're
out.
saying carve it out in the meantime.
Yes.
Take it out completely.
Yes,
This clause also
Remove it
has
and
stuff
reserve
about-
it.
yes.
We reserve the section, we adopt the rest of it, and then we just proceed forward with.
And then you just, you would then amend it as it being reserved,
Mhm.
which is a pretty clean
I'll work with
amendment,
you on it.
once it's reserved.
Are we saying,
If you do the sliding scale, I'll work on the language.
we're saying we're taking out the old through 2034 then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think it's proposed, it's
Yes.
already proposed to be removed, so there wouldn't be any changes to what is currently proposed. It would
It would
just be kind of putting the proposed 115 on ice while regulations
Cause
were.
this has some of
granted.
this stuff like, you can't dig a water body. Maybe like a big.
Right, and that's why it's like, it's already covered by the wetlands, it's just.
No,
a
not
bad
dig
section.
in a water body, create a water.
Yeah, like I decided I'm gonna put a koi pond in or something.
Yeah, or some huge, fucking pool or something. I mean, I.
So you're
We're not saying we're gonna toss all the language. We're saying we're gonna look at the language. Put together something that maybe incorporates that with the sliding scale or what have you. We're not tossing it
But for the
completely.
period of time that it's removed or reserved,
Right.
The wetlands
there could be
regulations.
some serious excavation
Keep it
going
right
on.
here.
It's not.
The provision hasn't been enforced. And by the way, the wetlands provision, as Val said, still covers what the immediate and day-to-day problems are, which is,
Right.
interfering with the wetlands and
Yeah.
water courses. So we're still covered.
Yeah,
And by the way, there's still state regulation.
right.
You still have the stormwater. Permit gets triggered at 5,000 square feet.
Oh, yeah, that's a
You
good
had
point.
a-
Right.
That's how we actually got that one case in because they exceeded the 5,000.
And there's
Right.
DEC regulations as well.
Yeah.
That regulate this. So if you really have a problem,
Mhm.
let me tell you something, when DEC gets involved with dirty fill coming in, it's expensive. And the homeowner, they are paying for both sides, the remediation, they're paying the engineer, they're paying, like, if there's gotta be a whole plan. And if DEP has to oversee the removal, it's even more expensive
So,
and more time
then
consuming.
we-
So there's plenty of ways to make sure.
That's fine.
Yeah.
so then maybe we target for March 24th, both. Adoption of the balance of 220, maybe adoption of the balance of 220 and introducing the new 34 or whatever it's gonna be. Right?
For March 24th.
Well, so if.
Yeah.
So just in order to introduce it as a standalone, it would need to follow the normal local law procedures, so it'd be kind
File
of.
with the county.
It would have to file with the county, refer to planning board, so if that is the approach, it would necessarily take that required time of
Yeah.
referrals, holding a public hearing.
March 24th.
But you can start it, yeah.
We,
absolutely.
in other words, we have a draft, initial draft,
You've got
we
the
adopt the
draft.
rest of the 220, we have so here's our draft to block out the 34, and then we,
Yeah, and then
so
you.
we lock down this piece and we have a draft to
Yeah.
keep the momentum going to get the other part.
Yeah, absolutely, you would just advance that as a separate local law.
Correct. Right, we would move ahead with the current zoning text amendments that we've gone through and we've tweaked and we've approved. And then this one is a carve out that we do separately.
Mhm.
But we've reserved the section.
Right, and we have the draft to get it started, so we keep the
Right.
momentum. going.
Shannon's
So-
about to raise her
I
hand.
have-
Can't wait
That's
to-
115 in or out?
Out.
115 is out,
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
but I do have a question for you, Janet. So when we file this with the state. We get charged, right, to update the code?
Correct.
Yes, every time we do it.
Do we get charged? So if we handle all these code changes, amendments at one time?
What they
Is
do is
that-
they codify twice a year for me. So they will
Okay.
codify, they'll take up to June
Mhm.
changes and codify in July
Okay,
and send me one bill. And then they'll take from
Twice a year.
June to December,
Mhm.
and then they'll codify in January and send me another bill.
okay, so it doesn't matter that we send two different, chapter 220 and this new. 220.
If everything's in before June, we're getting one bill.
That's my question, yeah.
If everything's in by June, we technically get one bill for the first half of the year.
They codify all at once, but the more you do, the more expensive.
That's
it is.
my
Yeah.
question. So
Right,
there
it
is-
doesn't matter,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how many submissions you make, it matters how many local laws you're giving them.
Correct.
Which it would not be a change in number of laws, because you would be, basically not
It's the same thing.
proceeding with 115 and proceeding with a standalone local law to
Ah, so
amend
that-
that
yeah,
provision,
yeah.
so it's really
It's the same
it's
either
the same
way,
number of local laws.
We're
same
keeping
number
one
of
law
local
to
laws, so the
20.
cost is still gonna be the same.
Right, okay,
I understand what you were saying because I
Yeah.
had said to you, well, you know, we're gonna do this, and then she's gotta notice it, it's gotta go up, like, well,
Right.
something else that we're dealing with, and then we're gonna amend that code later, then we have to do it all over again, then that's
yeah, yeah,
cost times two. But with this, it's per law.
right, okay,
So there's
So
still gonna be local laws, seven different local laws. Changes, that's what we had.
That's what we're
Right.
hoping to
Yeah.
accomplish
yes.
by the time we close the public hearing.
Yes, yeah, it would just be that this local law would be amending zoning. In lieu of adopting chapter 115, it's still a standalone local law.
Yeah.
I count six,
Say again?
I count six. If you
Oh,
don't
are we
count,
including the attachment?
oh, no, I didn't include the attachment.
But that's
Is that
not,
something?
that's technically not a local law, that's it's an attachment, and so, yeah.
So
And
it
so,
only would
okay.
be
We don't have
six,
any-
not
yeah.
seven.
yeah, it's six.
You don't have.
We don't have to worry about that,
Seven
do we?
documents, six
Yeah.
local
We have no
laws.
executive session.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Okay, so do we wanna
Oh,
talk
Lord.
steep slopes?
We have an executive session, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so.
It's 10:17. Do you wanna tackle steep slopes on another day, or you guys wanna do it tonight?
Yeah, so
Well-
we got executives, how long we have,
Shouldn't be that long.
yes.
Why don't we give it there?
steep slopes, let's see, that's many pages, right?
I definitely have more energy tonight than I did the other one.
John's
Yeah.
suggestions addressing some of the comments from last month.
Yeah, we just got that, maybe because we want to take a look at that and incorporate. Process that, the potential alternatives that Leon is about.
Yeah, we got that next week, but
Yes, February 20th, Friday, that's right.
all right, so we wanna, yeah,
I'm gonna just go over the.
yeah, what should, yeah.
Yes,
what-
please.
Okay, so at the last meeting, we talked about the three slope categories. And I think they were maybe all under the impression that there was no regulation for the 15 to 25%, the moderately steep slope. We pointed out that there was a definition for it, but we didn't think it was a regulated category, but I think it is. I think that's the category which would require steep slopes permit from the building department. So I just wanted to bring, I went back and re-reviewed the code, and that seems to me the way it's written, right? So you have the three slope categories. And at the lowest, the moderately steep slope 15 to 25 is a permit that's issued by the building inspector. Then anything greater goes to the planning board. With the extremely steep slopes greater than 35 being, really discouraged. It's possible to build in them, but you really have to demonstrate why you can't avoid them. So that was just to point out those three categories.
What were the slopes in Mercedes and Lewisboro Commons, the range?
There was some steep slope disturbance on both of them. Yep.
The highest level. The extremely steep slopes, right?
Well, you have that big retaining wall in the back of Mercedes Benz, so that's like pretty much a vertical disturbance. And the driveway going up to the commons was disturbed slope, probably in the 25% range.
It looks like it was more than that.
Well, the driveway itself is probably about 10%. But to get there, there was a lot of disturbance and grading.
It started at a higher slope.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
building, they reduced it,
Um,
regrading.
so then, within the trigger for the permits, 500 square feet of disturbance, that's found in the definition of steep slope. So that's the threshold trigger for the permit. And then I just pointed out with the communities, that abut you, with what they're regulated. The Beford's trigger is 100 square feet, 25% or greater. Coverage is 500 square feet, 25% or greater, and North Salem doesn't regulate steep slopes. And then at the last meeting, we talked about maybe adding some exemptions. We talked about looking at the wetlands ordinance because there's a laundry list of exemptions in the wetlands code. So I took a crack at, you know, 10 or so potential exemptions for steep slopes. And I had we had discussed, you know, the lake communities, people, you know, trying not to discourage people from making improvements on their properties, especially for water and sewer. So that's all spelled out in here. In-kind replacement of walkways and terraces and patios, seawalls, that type of thing, would all be potentially unregulated or exempt activities, removal of underground fuel tanks.
In kind meaning just keeping the same footprint and
Yeah.
just.
Yeah. Drainage work, installation of generators and propane tanks and things that are pretty benign. So that's
It's mirroring some of the planning board, like administrative things we
exactly,
have, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We want to encourage people to take care of their septic systems.
Yeah. Those are typically not on steep slopes because you
Right.
can't build a septic on this, but you have existing systems that are on steep slopes, or a lot of times you might have you know, the sewer line from the house to the septic might cut through a steep slope, and your septic might be lower on your property in a flat area, but you have to replace the sewer line, you're ripping up a steep slope, then, you know, that would have required a permit, but this would.
Okay. I like that idea.
I did too.
So do we want to? Yeah, realize this into the.
Well, I like the 500 square feet, not 100.
Yeah, I think we.
Good with that.
Wrap this in.
And then I think the other thing is just, I think my impression was that the town board was under the impression that
15.
the 15% was unregulated, so if you wanted to do that, you would have identified the locations of the code that would have to get revised to eliminate that regulation.
I don't think we need to regulate
Yeah, it's
that.
maybe because you have other permits that get triggered, like the stormwater permit, if you had any sizable project, you
Yeah,
see that anyway.
Because both, yeah, the neighboring municipalities only kick in at 25%,
yeah.
That's right.
and now Salem doesn't at all, so. We're not being more onerous than the
No.
neighboring
The
and less than North Salem.
Yeah. I agree.
So the administrative permit, basically the administrative permit.
on that, yeah,
And it would just be for planning board for.
Over 25.
25%.
over 25.
Yeah. I'm very happy with that. We hope that we are able to let our neighbors take care of their property. And make repairs.
I guess we kind of have, sounds like consensus, maybe the 24th, we have a draft on both of those, right? Both on the 34 reserve and on this one, so we move them both together.
Well, don't we need to finalize all the bigger ones first? We
Yeah.
need- Yeah, we need
Should.
all the other ones that we went through the last work session and this work session, but for steep slopes and.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking, like, we vote on it, but vote on it 24th.
And we can vote on everything else but these. I don't know. if
Yeah,
we
we
can
can vote on
that.
everything else but these two.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 24th, that's what I'm thinking.
24th.
So we have the final version, people
Okay,
could
I
sit, and then we, because we didn't close the hearing, and then the
What
24th.
you want is the draft of these two by that time. And the
Right,
vote.
right, to get the, just so we keep the momentum going. So on the 24th, we have all the stuff we've done today, we post that, people have time, and then the 24th, we have the final public hearing, we close, and then we vote on the balance of 220.
Well,
Well-
don't we want to keep it open? For the people to read the draft.
No, that's what I'm saying, on the 24th, in other words, we have the hearing open till the 24th, we open that up, and then we close it, and then we vote, and so that will have the last.
But you gotta take into
Last-
consideration when we get these next.
These may not be able to be,
No, but the 220 part, we can do,
yes,
Yeah.
everything else but these.
yeah.
Right.
And then we'll have to have a separate public hearing on the new drafts of the new law.
So today's the 3rd. I don't know.
That's
That's a short
I
timeline.
don't think that they
But-
can,
I think with
The proposed final for
Yeah,
everything else
with-
but these two. Yeah.
with the proposed final, they're pretty much there. It's
Okay.
just a going through and making sure that, edits that have been made are actually reflected and,
Yeah.
Principle.
one thing is for with the zoning is if something was proposed and then, so it was draft language and then it was proposed to be removed and now it's gonna be removed, it's gonna be entirely removed from the next version because it's never been local law and the rules of drafting under municipal home rule require that legislative bodies remove or review local laws and strikeouts and underline. So anything that was only made it to the proposed stage and is not being considered for adoption will no longer be in the draft local laws.
Right.
And there won't be any more highlighting anymore. So what you'll see is essentially
Cleaned up.
Brand
black
new.
letter and red line.
So we
That's
have,
it.
we have a meeting on the 10th, so by that time, we'll know ETA as far as getting that. We'll know in a week when we'll have it, then we can make. Target the 24th or adjust as needed. That'll give council a week to see where they are as far as draft timing.
Yeah, I mean, well,
You got it.
I'm speaking for quick, but it's where we are on 220 and on the other. The other local laws that are behind us. That's really a different mechanics.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just getting it. Read form for adoption.
Yeah, you just, I guess, report to Tony before the 10th, and then if we're.
Right,
then
but
we
in
can-
terms of posting, because you said posted for the public.
Yeah.
What's posted there now is pretty much.
Is pretty much it. And
all we
then,
have, so
and
we
then
don't
you'll have
to
to,
repost unless.
Yeah. and
Right.
then you'll have the,
Everything but these two.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right, so.
Yeah, and when I remember, I think our target, we were targeting like first quarter of 25, right? We were kind of.
Yeah.
Shooting that for that, right?
you seem like you want to ask something or say something. Are you
No,
good?
I'm not maybe trying, I think. I'll do that.
Ah.
A little dry, a little bit dry.
Okay, so I think we're done, right?
Yep.
For
For-
this, okay. So we did, yeah, so announcements, town board meeting next Monday, we get to do this again, okay, not a work session, but a regular town board meeting, March 10th. At 7:30 PM at the townhouse here at 11 Main Street, South Salem. And now I will like to motion that we go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter.
Second.
Second. Discussion, all in favor?